recorded live from Studio 12A, you're listening to the Josh and Friends Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Josh and Friends Podcast. I am your host. My name is Josh. And today's topic is one that hopefully everyone can enjoy. We all love a great story, especially if it's outrageous or downright ridiculous. And in this week's episode, we're going to try and tackle a wide variety of topics, ranging from funny to sad to just plain stupid. Today, we are discussing the craziest moments in Seahawks history. And joining me in the conversation today is my color commentator and one of my oldest friends, Mr. Ethan McDonald. And he brings a ton of credibility to the table here. Not only was he the captain of our high school football team, but he also went on to play football at the college level. And if that wasn't enough, this man has an impressive 22 years of coaching experience under his belt. So this guy's the real deal. We both grew up in the greater Seattle area as fans of the Seahawks. And we attended numerous games over the years in every single venue the team has ever played in. So I think we have a pretty good perspective as lifelong fans. But hey, enough of my babbling. Let's get on to the countdown. Let's get this party started. Let's do this. So make sure to grab a drink of your choosing, sit back, recline in that lazy boy chair of yours, and enjoy the countdown. All right, so I thought we'd start it off with kind of a fun one here. This is the runner-up to our list of the top 40 craziest moments in Seahawks history. So, here we go. Coming in at number 41, Donut Gate. The date was June 5th, 2010. It was an early Saturday morning at 3 a.m.
And somebody was probably high.
Or drunk or something. And the police department, they were called in because two men were found entering the Top Pot Donut Shop in Bellevue. And one of the men found at the donut shop after hours, well, he was wide receiver number 81, Golden Tate. Golden Tate was caught entering the back door of the donut place, which was located in the same building where he lived at the time. And they came back in through the back and were caught getting some donuts. What do you think about that?
Case of the munchies, as it said, right? A case of the munchies. So, once again, they're high or drunk. I mean, who hasn't wanted some drunk food in the middle of the night? I mean, usually Taco Bell suffices, but hey, donuts. Who's the judge?
So, yeah, he's caught. The cops are called, and the owner, he doesn't press charges.
Brilliant move.
Yeah, smart move on his end because he turned it into a marketing deal there. He's like, hey, look, our donuts are so irresistible. If you want to come get some maple bars, this is the place to go. Because Golden Tate, well, I think he said the same thing. They're pretty irresistible. So
you'll commit crimes for these donuts. They're so good.
Exactly. So that was Donut Gate.
Donuts.
All right, here we go. Number 40. Less than zero. Not our best moment. The date was November 4th, 1979. It was a game between the Seattle Seahawks and the Los Angeles Rams. And this one was at home in Seattle at the Kingdom.
And the Concrete Big Mac. Concrete Big Mac.
So this is actually known as the worst offensive performance in NFL history.
In fact, Josh, you could say it's offensive how little offense there was.
It was offensive. It's very offensive. So this game is pretty legendary. I mean, well, I don't know if legendary is the right word. Infamous. Jim Zorn. Yeah, that's a way better description. So Jim Zorn, he completed 2 passes for 25 yards on 17 attempts. And, of course, both of those completions were to, well, who is it, Ethan? Who do you think?
Steve Largent, the legend.
Of course. And then running back Sherman Smith, you're like, okay, well, if the passing game wasn't completely on, maybe we had some sort of rushing game going on. Well, no, that wasn't the case either, because he rushed 7 times for 16 yards.
That's not an impressive average, I'm going to be honest.
No. So the Seahawks, they gained a grand total of 48 yards that day, which in itself would have been the 16th worst total in NFL history, but Zorn was sacked 6 times for a loss of 55 yards.
All I could say is, wow, Josh, this is clearly pathetic. Because it's like, I mean, the Rams back then in the 70s obviously had a really good D-line. Because if I'm not mistaken, this is like when you had Deacon Jones and, you know, kind of the fearsome foursome there on the front line. I could be wrong.
Was Jack Youngblood there yet?
Yeah, I think I would have been, but I don't know. 79 might be, those guys might have been gone by then. I'm going to have to check myself before I wreck myself, as the great Ice Cube said.
So this game, because of those sacks, it ended up resulting in the total offense of the day at -7 yards.
Wow.
That was the total. -7 yards, which is still, to this day, the worst offensive performance the league has ever seen. How impressive is that? That's pretty impressive.
That's not impressive. That's depressing. But once again, is it really surprising with our Seahawks? No. All the other crap that we have on our team and its history. Yeah,
we were still relatively new as a franchise, so...
Yeah, 3 years old. And no, it looks like Deacon Jones is probably already done, but I mean, they must have had some decent D-linemen. So Jack Youngblood might have been there, I don't know. Yeah. But Deacon Jones got in the Hall of Fame in 80, so he had to have been retired for, 5 years prior to that? 75?
Yeah, that sounds about right. And just for another couple quick stats here, the Seahawks, they only gained 1 first down. Can you even imagine how bad that is?
So pathetic.
And they never actually made it past their own 42-yard line.
Good Lord.
Yeah, so that is -7 yards total in the
It's professional football, right? Professional football, and they were that pathetic.
Yeah. You know how they always talk about how some college teams could maybe possibly beat... This might have been one of those teams that, you know, the best college team quite possibly could have beat the NFL team here.
Well, Jesus, Josh, let's put the Huskies of 79 in there. They might have been better. I mean, They probably could have gotten more than a first down in this game, I'm guessing. Like, come on, man. Call a creative play. Call a trick play, for God's sake. Do something.
Yeah,
Trick
do
these
anything,
poor
man.
bastards.
I agree. So, yeah. So there it goes. Yeah, that's the worst NFL performance in NFL history, and I'm glad those days are over. Yeah.
Of course, our Seahawks. That's just too fitting.
0.0.
Number 39, the flag football star. The year was 1999, and it was training camp for the Seahawks. But there was one thing missing. One thing. Seahawks superstar wide receiver number 84, Joey Galloway. Galloway, he was in his final year of his contract with the Seahawks, and he was going to be bringing in just over $1.5 million that season, and he was the leading receiver for the Seahawks for the past 3 seasons, and Seattle had offered Galloway a 7-year contract worth $35 million, but, well, that wasn't good enough for our boy Joey.
Well, it sounds like there was other guys that were getting similar money right around the time, or even maybe a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, clearly he valued himself as probably the best receiver in the NFL at the time.
Yeah. Well, so he decided instead of playing in the NFL, he's going to hold out, but he's also going to fulfill a lifelong dream of becoming a quarterback. And that was for the Ohio Valley Flag Football League, who went 4-0, by the way, when he was playing with them. And he admits that he wasn't great at quarterback, but he was having fun. And 3 weeks into the season, the Seahawks withdrew their $35 million contract offer and told him that he must play under the terms of his existing contract if he wants to play at all.
Well, that's playing hardball, but at the same time, you're almost kind of just saying that, like, when this is up, clearly you're moving on, which I was kind of frustrating as a Seahawks fan when we finally have someone as talented as Joey Galloway.
Which happens a lot.
At the same time, I don't want some douche that doesn't want to play for us on our team, but...
Yeah, happens a lot in sports.
Yeah, it does.
So the holdout was actually costing him $93,000 a game. On top of that, the Seahawks were also fining him $5,000 a day. So, so he ended up returning back to the Seahawks in Week 10 on November 14th, where the Seahawks ended up defeating the Broncos 20-17. Yeah.
I love anytime we kick those
Broncos butts.
Hell
yeah. And Galloway.
All the AFC West days.
Galloway, he had been fined $305,000 for the 61 days since training camp opened, and he lost out on $279,000 in missed paychecks. So yeah.
Just like 1 year of earnings for you, right, Josh?
Yep, yep. It's comparable. Yeah. So Joey Galloway.
Show me the money.
All right, number 38. Going from to The date was January 10th, 2016, and the Seahawks are playing the Vikings in the NFC wildcard matchup. It was the third coldest game in NFL history. -6 degrees. And the wind chill factor was calculated at -25. That's crazy. It was
crazy game.
The third coldest game in NFL history. So with just 26 seconds remaining, Vikings kicker Blair Walsh kicks a 27-yard chip shot to win the game. But Walsh completely finkles this shot.
Finkel. Ray Finkel, a legend.
The kick sails wide left, and it's a horrible miss. Like, not only did he miss it, it's awful. It looks terrible. Ethan, do you remember how hilarious this was?
Oh yeah, watching this game and just I'm like, we thought it was done, right? We were just pissed. We're like, I can't believe we're gonna lose this game, or
it was just so bad.
So frustrating. And then to watch him just do that, I immediately went back to, and given it was a much tougher kick for Norwood in the Super Bowl against the Giants.
Yeah.
But one of those ones like, will you ever recover from this? Like, I thought, Sarah always says, I feel so bad for kickers. And you know me, I've always historically made fun of kickers because they have one freaking job and they don't do it. But needless to say, I mean, cold or whatever, that was embarrassing. And you'd think, burning Seahawks fans' brains forever, like, thank God Blair Walsh screwed it up.
Yeah.
It was an ugly game, man.
Yeah.
It was ugly.
But yeah, so that's not where the story ends. So Seattle decides not to re-sign Stephen Hauschka, who was one of the most solid kickers in franchise history.
Absolutely.
He was like solid, and like the girls liked him too because he kind of looked like a young Steve Largent.
Oh yeah. Little sunshine boy.
Yeah. And during his 6 years in Seattle, Stephen Hauschka, he made 89% of his field goals and 89% of his extra points. And Blair Walsh, well, he had an average percentage of 83% of his field goals. And with his final year in Minnesota, he made just 75% of his field goals. That's
not professionally acceptable. No, that's garbage. It just makes you think, like, why? I mean, given we were trying to pay all those guys on defense still, and Russ, I think so. We didn't want to spend the money on Hauschka, but man.
Yeah, so
we know where this is going. Yeah. We signed Blair Walsh, like one of the strangest decisions in Seahawk franchise history.
It really is. So yeah, on February 9th, 2017, the Seahawks announced that we have signed kicker Blair Walsh.
And I believe the Seattle collectively said, "Are you shitting me?"
Yeah, no, it really was shocking. We're like, wait a minute, is that guy we were like literally laughing at? Like, really? Yeah. So on November 5th, 2017, Walsh missed 3 field goals in the first half, and the Seahawks went on to lose 17-14 in that game. On November 20th, 2017, on Monday Night Football against the Atlanta Falcons, Walsh came up short on a 52-yard, it's a long field goal, 52-yard field goal with 2 seconds left, and, well, we lost that game.
Not even a month later, though, man. We're talking a couple of weeks, and he's killing us again.
Yeah. And then, finally, on December 31st, 2017, with less than a minute remaining, Walsh comes in, misses another field goal, costing the Seahawks 26-24, resulting in the team not getting a playoff berth. So
somebody better just, fork over some serious dough to the fans, or at least maybe some donuts. Maybe we all get some donuts from that place that Golden Tate broke into. I don't know. Repay the fans somehow.
So Blair Walsh, I don't think he played again for the Seahawks. I think that was it.
Oh, shoot. That's no fair.
All right.
Didn't we go to Seabass after that? Is that what we brought in Janikowski, the Polish sausage?
Is that really who you signed up to that?
There could be one in between, but it's just like, okay, let's keep getting every washed-up kicker.
Yeah, right?
Clearly hasn't, because we don't want to spend money on it.
So that was Blair Walsh, leaving his lasting legacy on the Seahawks. Thanks, buddy. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Your little footballs.
Laces out.
All right, up next, we have number 37, Alexander the Great. The year was Y2K, the year 2000, and it was draft day on April 15th. And the Seahawks select running back Shaun Alexander out of Alabama. And, well, he got to play behind that famous line in the 2000s. Alexander was basically unstoppable. And he had 5 straight seasons with 1,000 yards rushing or more.
Very impressive.
Including a new NFL record for touchdowns in 2005 with 27. And the league MVP. Has anybody before or since won the MVP for the Seahawks? I don't know.
And he broke Emmitt Smith's record too, which is rare air, right? To get up there with, obviously those legendary Cowboy teams and what that offensive line and running game was like.
Yeah, it was wild. It was insane. So are Vikings fans always laughing at us in the end? Because it seems like it. Seems like it. Because in 2006, the Seahawks, well, they had a big decision to make. Do they place a franchise tag on offensive guard Steve Hutchinson, or do they sign running back Shaun Alexander?
I'll tell you what, Steve Hutchinson, being a guy who coached and played offensive line for years, I mean, it's the most probably underappreciated position. And clearly as Seahawk fans, we've seen the damage that can be done when we don't have decent players up there or guys that are trying hard, but maybe just aren't at the right tier. You don't get many Steve Hutchinsons in your franchise history.
No.
I mean, that guy, I still believe he would be a first ballot Hall of Famer had he stayed at the Seahawks and kept that notoriety working with Walter Jones. And just what was an amazing offensive line.
Him and Walter Jones are like 2 of the best blockers of that entire era, possibly ever.
Absolutely.
And Shaun Alexander got to run behind him. So,
well, that's it. You and I as fans, Josh always used to say, it's like nothing against, Emmitt Smith. He was a fantastic talent and did exactly what you should with great blocking. I do believe it was Shannon Sharp, though, once, or maybe it was Sterling Sharp that said on ESPN, that he goes, if you give Barry Sanders that offensive line, he rushes for like 8,000 yards. And clearly he's being exaggeratory, but it's like, you can't underappreciate the offensive line the way that the Seahawks made the mistake of doing so, because clearly evidence shows without Steve, we were not quite the same team.
Well, isn't that why Barry Sanders eventually left? He's like, you know what? I'm just going to retire. Like, you guys aren't helping me out here. I can only run around like a complete lunatic this many years in a row. So, yeah. Okay, so the Seahawks end up, well, they placed the franchise tag on Shaun Alexander, and I remember right after they announced this, I turned to my buddy Ryan.
Ryan Dunham.
Good old Ryan. And I said, this is it. It's over. This era's over. And it was, because the very next year, Shaun Alexander, well, he went from 1,880 yards rushing in 2005 to just 896 yards rushing in 2006.
Good Lord.
That's seriously 1,000 yards less rushing than he had the year before. And then each year just got worse and worse. It was the fall of Alexander the Great.
Yeah, he went from Alexander the Great to Jason Alexander,
the
actor who plays George. So unfortunately, we didn't get the Summer of George, though, Seinfeld style from this guy. I mean, how many times have we seen this in the NFL where a running back gets paid and they just aren't the same? And part of it's just, the nature of the position and the physicality and the punishment you take. But my Lord, man.
It is kind of that, what do they usually say about running backs too? They have like a 5-year window. I mean, I don't know.
Those rare exceptions.
Hey, and look,
yeah, you're right.
In that 5 years, he was one of the top 3 running backs in the entire league. So there you go.
Well,
is Shaun Alexander a Hall of Famer?
I don't think so. To me, there's the Hall of Fame, and then there's the Hall of, the theoretical Hall of Good. And he was a really good player, but I just don't know that just that 5-year period, and some might argue against me.
Yeah.
Just don't know that 5 years is enough longevity in the league to be considered Hall of Fame, but that's just my opinion.
All right, so there you have it. Alexander the Great, or as Ethan says, Alexander the Very Good.
Pretty good.
Well, that brings us to our next one. Number 36, The Block.
A true Hall of Famer.
Yes. The first 20 years of the Seahawks were basically here and there we would have like a superstar or two, but again, the rest of the league, we didn't have a guy that was the best at his respected position besides Steve Largent. Until this guy came along. He was the first round pick of the 1997 draft out of Florida State. He is, of course, the legendary offensive tackle Walter Jones. And Ethan, how good was this guy?
He is exactly what he is, a Hall of Fame, once in a franchise type of offensive tackle. I mean, there's the legends like an Anthony Munoz and stuff, and he's like that to me. Like the fact that he was such a large man
He's huge.
And running dang near 5. I think even in college one time he was clocked at under 5, like a 4.9 or 4.8 at like 300 pounds in the 40-yard dash. I mean, this guy was just a freak of nature athletically. And it sounds like he was a heck of a hooper and all those things, but just on top of it, just a fantastic kind of member of the community, his foundation. I mean, just Walter Jones is, front and back, just one of the best things that ever happened to the Seattle franchise.
Absolutely. So he played 180 games, all with Seattle, and during that time, the Seahawks attempted 5,500 passes with Jones on the field. He gave up only 23 sacks in that entire time, and he was penalized for holding just 9 times.
9 is insane, man. Like, there's guys we have right now that get 9 in 3 weeks, it feels like.
Yeah, totally. He's just insane, like on so many levels. But there is one play that is burned into my head and many other people's heads, and it just displays the complete dominance of this guy. And it is known as the block. And it was during the NFC Championship game at Quest Field on January 26, 2006 versus the Carolina Panthers. And Walter Jones is blocking. He's blocking on a running play for Shaun Alexander. And no wonder Shaun Alexander could get like 1,800 yards in a season because, I mean, he drives this defender.
Yeah.
I don't know how many yards down the field. It was like 15, 20 yards. I mean, it was crazy.
Well, and the fact that if you watch the highlight too and stuff, it's not like he got a DB or some guy that was undersized. Like, this was the defensive end. He goes out in a scoop reach block to the left, gets his big old mitts on this guy, and literally, like you said, drives him 15 to maybe 20 yards downfield before just putting him onto his back.
It's insane.
And the only thing that's amazing is that Shaun Alexander ends up getting tripped up like on the 1 rather than punching it in for a touchdown, it was incredible just to see, once again, just the athleticism and the attitude. I mean, just that kind of nasty finish people up. That just kind of helps set the tone.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that guy, look, you could pick out he has a highlight reel. Dude, he's a Hall of Famer. He has like several plays like that, but watching that block is like watching a practice squad, like blocking one of those sleds in the, blocking drills.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is like a human being that he's a large human being in the NFL that he's blocking down the field like this. He's just amazing, man. He's just amazing.
Well, it's one of those things too, like where you don't tend to watch the offensive line very often, but when you do, and I know he's no Walter Jones, but how lucky have we been to pick up Dwayne Brown?
Yeah.
Just you watch that guy get out and lead block on plays and give, and now he's kind of getting to the point of his career where I'm sure his body's going to start betraying him, but it just makes such a difference to have a guy that you can kind of put as the center pin of your offensive line, that brings that nastiness and that physicality, which clearly is part of, Pete Carroll style football as well.
Absolutely. Walter Jones, inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame in 2014. So, love that man.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Number 35, the Fumble Kings. Okay, so...
I feel like I watched many of these in the case of Dave Krieg.
Oh, we all did, man. All right, so we have 2 legends here. The first one is longtime Seahawks quarterback Dave Krieg, who played for the Seahawks between the years 1980 and 1991. This man racked up 26,000 yards, over 26,000 yards, threw for 195 touchdown passes, and he actually held the team record until Russell Wilson broke it in 2018. That's pretty astonishing, actually.
Pretty impressive, yeah.
He was the first player in Seahawks history to throw 5 touchdowns in a single game, which, by the way, I think that's very impressive considering that was not the passing era. Like, it's hard to describe now to,
right,
the younger generation what the NFL was, because it was basically you run 2 or 3 times and then you pass and then, well, it's time to punt.
Yeah.
Well, especially for the Seahawks.
Yeah.
But, he retired in 1998 with 261 touchdowns, which was number 18 all-time on the NFL all-time passing list, which is, again, amazing. And then we have Warren Moon, which I know you have a soft spot for Warren Moon in your heart as far as...
I do. Ties to the Northwest, UW. Yep. You got ties to the CFL, being a Canadian myself.
Yeah.
And then just the fact that he was unbelievable at Houston. So I was super excited once he came to Seattle, and I think my mom had a huge crush on him too.
So he spent 6 years, after graduating UW, he spent 6 years at Edmonton with the Eskimos.
I don't think Eskimos is derogatory, but maybe. don't know.
From 1978 to 1983, before heading over to the NFL to play with the Houston Oilers in 1984. And he spent about a decade with Houston, just racking up crazy amounts of stats.
Oh, yeah.
And
run and shoot offense.
Yeah. And then he went over to Minnesota. And then he joined the Seahawks in 1997 and 1998. And as great as these two guys were, and they were great, they also both shared one small problem.
Very small hands. Yeah. Joking, I don't know.
They couldn't hold on to the ball. These guys, they fumbled a lot.
A lot.
And Dave Krieg actually retired in 1998 as the NFL's all-time leader for fumbles with 153.
Yeah, but didn't Warren come and steal that from him?
Yep, he did. He did as a Seahawk.
Because it just had to be right. It had to be a Seahawk first before you took the record from Krieg. Sports tragedies. We're really good at those.
Exactly. So he broke Dave Krieg's record with 161 fumbles to his name. And that record actually stood for nearly a decade until it was later broken by Brett Favre, or Brett Favre. Yeah. So Ethan, what do you think about those stats?
It's fitting that I'm surprised Brett Favre didn't finish his career at the Seahawks just to set the tone. It kills me too, because I mean, all three of those guys are guys I absolutely love the way they play football. I mean, Warren Moon maybe threw the most beautiful ball ever.
He really did.
Brett Favre was just a gunslinger and so fun to watch no matter where he was at. And and I really have a special spot in my heart for Dave Krieg too, just because where would Seattle be without him?
Yeah. I actually met Dave Krieg a few years ago. He's a super nice guy. And I just had to ask him. I was like, you know what? You always got that bad rap because your hands were so small. So I was like, Dave, it's an odd request, but can we hold up our hands together? I want to take a picture with your hand next to my hand and just see if it was normal size. And he thought that was pretty funny. So he's like, yeah, sure, I don't care. And when he held up his hand, it was just like a normal size hand. It wasn't like anything, freakishly small or anything like that. It was a normal-sized hand, but maybe that was the problem. I don't know.
The thing that's so crazy is that I think normal-sized hands, though, are small by NFL quarterback standards.
Right.
You look at, like, Russell Wilson's, his are gigantic, and just the way he can manipulate and fling a ball. But, I mean...
Well, also now, quarterbacks are just tall and, taller, generally.
There's a lot of those guys in the 70s and 80s that played that you look at them, and they look like insurance salesmen. They do not look like pro football players. And obviously, just you can see the evolution of pro athletics and what we do,
Some of them are straight up like pudgy. Like, you're like, who's it? That guy played quarterback? Wow. Okay. All right, so there you have it. Dave Krieg and Warren Moon, the Seattle Fumble Kings.
Small hands. Indeed.
All right, moving on. So, number 34, Pure Domination. This one was one of the greatest years for sports in the city of Seattle. Scratch that. No. It was the greatest year in sports history. You can argue all you want about the 79 Sonics, but this destroyed that.
Josh, are you forgetting the 1917 Stanley Cup champion by the Seattle? I'm just joking. I mean, we did win a Stanley Cup back when there was a team, but yeah, I'm enough being a smartass. Continue. I'm sorry.
The 2013 season for the Seattle Seahawks, it was just pure domination. We had all these characters. It was like one of those teams where, kind of like the Cowboys in the 90s where they had all those superstars, right?
Yeah.
They were always on TV. They had huge ratings. They had, everything about the team. It was just magical. You had Beast Mode with Marshawn Lynch. You had the upcoming star with Russell Wilson. And you had, Pete Carroll. He's always fun to watch because he's always just running back and forth on the sidelines and stuff. You're like, what is going on with this guy? This guy's the oldest coach in the NFL? Really?
Right.
It's crazy.
You see that defense coming together. That defense was starting, and you could see it like the year before and stuff with our giant guys at corner that could just physically manhandle, and then Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas, and obviously you got Bobby Wags. I mean, it was just like the defensive line that I think was so underrated at that time with Cliff Averill, especially when you watch the highlights of that game and just him and Michael Bennett and just the pressure and the way that they could absolutely dominate up front. Like you were saying, it was pure domination.
It really was. It really was. And the whole year was great, but it came down to that last game. Super Bowl 48 on February 2nd, 2014. The Broncos versus the Seahawks in New Jersey. And this was supposed to be a pretty legendary game. I mean, you had the number one offense of all time versus one of the greatest defenses to ever step on the field. one for the ages.
Cold weather Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah, totally. What was the weather supposed to be like for that game?
It's supposed to be this cold weather Super Bowl, and I was making a big deal out of it, and it ended up being like in the 40s, like 49 degrees, and not bad at all. But
you're right. But yeah, so basically what this Super Bowl was, it was essentially Peyton Manning versus the LOB. And going into this game, the Broncos averaged 340 games passing per game, 117 yards rushing per game, and averaged an astonishing 40 points per game. 40 points. They were the number one offensive team in NFL history, which is, I mean, think about that. They're blowing people out.
There's no way in a million years anyone could have seen this coming.
Exactly.
I sure as hell didn't. I was so nervous. I remember like sweating through my bed the night before.
Right. So let's just say the Seahawks defense, well, they had their work cut out for them. But unlike the Steelers Super Bowl back in 2006, well, the 12s, we were traveling out to this game. We were not messing around. We meant business. And let me tell you, the fans brought the noise. You remember that thing? They were like loud, even though because like Super Bowls aren't usually loud, really loud for one team or another. Not this one.
Well, I think Seattle knew we were on the verge of something special, right? You could just feel it, the electricity.
Exactly. And Peyton Manning, well, he ended up having one of his worst performances ever. I mean, the game started out gloriously for the Seahawks.
Yes, it did.
I mean, the ball
looked like, what was he? He was trying to audible, it looked like, right? And the center snaps it anyway, like right over his head through the end zone. Like, yeehaw.
So great. And Peyton Manning ended up throwing 2 interceptions, and the Seahawks held the Broncos to just 27 yards rushing on 14 attempps. It's
14
wild.
attempts just shows you this how far they fell behind in this game, how fast.
Yeah, and one of my friends that we call Bronco Girl, she later actually sent me a text and said, right when I saw that play, I knew it was over. And right when that ball went over his head, because the Super Bowl is so much about momentum, and I kind of felt the same way. I was like, that's a great sign right there.
Yes, it does.
That's a great way to start the game, and it just got the crowd going even crazier. So it kept getting better and better. If you're a Seahawks fan, it's recognized as one of the worst Super Bowls in history, unless you're a Seahawks fan. And that's
right.
It's the greatest.
A neutral party would be bored out of their mind watching that one-sided ass whipping.
Right. Yeah, so we demolished the Broncos and their number one offense of all time by a score of 43-8. It's one of the most lopsided victories in Super Bowl history. So yeah, what's the old saying with defense, Ethan?
Oh, Josh, defense wins championships, baby. Offense sells tickets.
Exactly. So, yeah. And that victory was followed by a massive parade in downtown Seattle with an estimated 700,000 fans in attendance.
We recorded that bad boy with our DVR, because, being over here in Eastern Oregon. But just so excited, obviously, as a longtime Seahawks fan and a guy that had season tickets to the Hawks back through the 90s, which was the worst time to be a season ticket holder. It was the craziest sight to see as you put down and stuff. It's just, it was unreal to see just that outpouring and just a city I think has been dying for so long to have anything relevant and significant happen to our sports programs that we have loved and supported for so long. And if you're listening, sports gods, bring back the Sonics now. But
Exactly. It was so great. That was a great time to be a Seahawks fan, man.
Absolutely.
All right, pure domination. Seahawks.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
All right, so next on our list, we have number 33, the Unstoppable Man. He was the number 3 overall pick by the Seahawks in 1990, April 22nd, 1990. And of course, we are talking about defensive tackle out of Miami, number 96, Cortez Kennedy.
The Tez Rex.
Yes. This man was a total monster. You remember this guy, Ethan? He was just nuts.
Oh my God, yes. Destroyed. And we were not a very good team at that time at all, especially offensively.
Yeah.
And yet we could put together some really great defenses. In fact, he's named to the all-decade team for the 1990s. Yeah. He's easily one of the greatest players. Like you were saying, like Largent was the face and really the only best at his position we had ever had. And here's the second guy before Walter Jones. I mean, it's amazing he got the Hall of Fame recognition when you're really playing on a team that got no recognition during this period of time. So he really had to stand out as just like an unblockable talent. This is like a once in a lifetime kind of defensive player.
Absolutely. And that 1992 season,
Yeah.
I mean, he was literally unstoppable. The highlights of him during that year are pretty much the only highlights you're going to see of any Seahawks like reel that you could find, because he was it, man. Like, he was nuts. Not only did he win Defensive Player of the Year for the entire league in 1992, which is amazing.
We were 2-14. We were terrible that year.
Exactly. Yeah. He was one of those rare players that you could literally focus directly on this guy and be thoroughly entertained by his pure domination.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this guy, he was on a mission in 1992 because his friend and mentor, Jerome Brown, had died right before the season started. So he decided to dedicate that season to him. He changed his jersey number from 96 to 99, in honor of his memory. And his buddy would have been proud, man, because he went completely nuts that year. He recorded 14 sacks in 1992 alone, and he was a big boy.
Which is impressive for an interior lineman. I don't know, there's a lot of educated fans out there who know exactly what we're talking about. For those that are just more of the casual fan of football, though, for an interior defensive tackle to pressure the quarterback, that's damn near 1 sack a game.
Right.
That's unheard of.
Yeah, and a lot of people credit him for literally changing that position because it was not played like that before that.
No. Well, and a lot of people were like, because he was 6'3", but he was way over 300 pounds, a lot of people believed he wasn't going to be quick enough or in shape enough. Or, I mean, he really opened up the possibility of the big man that kind of had that maybe a little rounder shape, but showed that he could be a super effective defensive player. It's like, stop worrying about the height and weight garbage and just find football players. And that's what this guy was from day one. Obviously, in that very vaunted history of the Miami Hurricane defenders, he was just an unbelievable football player and was really, really just one of the people.
He was amazing.
That changed his franchise.
Absolutely amazing. He went to 8 Pro Bowls in his 11-year career and currently sits in the Seahawks Ring of Honor, which is well-deserved. And in 2007, Sports Illustrated actually named him the best athlete to ever wear the number 96.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. So yeah, Cortez.
He's a bad man.
All right, number 32, the Retaliation. All right, man, so this next one on the list, it's not necessarily my favorite moment in Seahawks history, but it's definitely crazy and wild. That's for sure. Things got pretty nuts in this game. I remember thinking to myself, this game brings a whole new meaning to the term out of control. I don't know if you remember this, Ethan. It was insane. It was just insane. I was like, what is going... I remember watching this game going, not only do the refs need to be called, I think the cops need to be called.
I felt like it was going to end up in some sort of like old-fashioned street rumble with chains and knuckles and
it was wild. So it was December 10th, 2017, and the Seahawks were playing the Jaguars, and the game was in Jacksonville, and the Seahawks, they're losing. It's 24-30, and it's the fourth quarter. It's like the very end of the fourth quarter. And you know how it is at that point of the game. Everyone's angry, on edge, pissed off. Tensions are high. It's just how it is. So a scuffle breaks out onto the field. Flags are thrown. It's getting pretty bad. There's a personal foul on Jacksonville, but there's also a personal foul on 2 Seattle players, Michael Bennett and Sheldon Richardson, who ended up getting ejected. And they tried to just, all right, we need to close this game out. Just kneel down the ball.
Yeah, just getting ugly.
Yeah, just get it done, get it out. They do that. Another fight breaks out. This time, Quinton Jefferson is the one who's involved in the scuffle. He ends up getting ejected for unnecessary roughness. And Pete Carroll, he runs onto the field. Then he's called for unsportsmanlike conduct, resulting in a 15-yard penalty. Who cares at this point? Just get him off the field. Just end it.
Yeah.
So Jefferson, he's jogging off the field into the tunnel, and a fan throws a beer at him.
This is where it gets even crazier, Josh.
It gets nuts. So instead of just continuing on to the locker room, which, probably most guys would probably do, nope, he turns around and he wants to fight the fan.
Yeah, he damn near climbs up the wall into the crowd.
It's
If it wasn't
crazy.
for people pulling him down like Seahawks, officials, the bodies that were trying to get him into the locker room.
It's outrageous. It's crazy to watch this. So yeah, he walks over. People are pulling him back, and they're like, "Hey man, let's get out of here. Chalk this one up. It's a loss. Let's go. Let's get out of here." He's like, all right. Security pulls him away, and another beer comes flying in his direction.
Hey, maybe you look thirsty.
Jeez, man. So he lunges again at the crowd. He tries to climb up into the stands. Oh, man. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, and as mentioned, this is not one of the proudest moments we've ever had being Seahawks fans, but you just wonder what was going on there. There seemed to be like little frays at the seams, maybe of the culture there at the team. Maybe they're just embarrassed they lost to the Jaguars or something, but
that's
always
always
a rough
embarrassing.
one.
Yeah, that's always embarrassing.
That was a rough one.
All right, well, there you have it. Quinton Jefferson and the Retaliation.
Your number's still 911? Oh, righty then.
All right, so number 31, the Implosion. Oh, the Kingdom, Ethan. The Kingdom.
Magical building of our childhood, Josh.
Yes, it was. So, long before the days of Lumen Field.
Which I hate that name. Continue.
Not a huge fan. There was a multi-purpose concrete stadium that opened in March of 1976. And the Seahawks, they first took on the 49ers in a preseason game on August 1st. And there were 60,825 people in attendance, and this place...
Solid attendance for a preseason game. Holy smokes.
Well, it was the first one, man.
Yeah, excited, I'm sure.
I'd want to be there, man. That'd be exciting. It'd be cool. There were so many events that took place at this stadium. I mean, there was so much history at this place.
There is.
As ugly and dark as this place was, it was kind of like, gloomy. It even kind of reflected.
Ceiling tiles falling and trying to kill people, later in its history.
But even looking at the stadium, didn't it just kind of reflect the town itself? It was like dark and gray.
Dark, gray. It's like a giant concrete Big Mac stuck right on the Puget Sound, just rotting there in the rain and the clouds.
Yes, but you know what? It was our dark, gray Big Mac that,
It was.
I had a special place in my heart. Yeah, in its 23 years of existence, over 72 million people entered that place.
That's incredible.
Isn't that crazy? So, do you have any events that you actually went to that are memorable to you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's some of these things we'll talk about later, like watching Bo run over Boz there.
Yeah.
Watching, just so many amazing Seahawks moments. I was actually at the Mariners game too, with the famous Game 5 to beat the Yankees, because Frank Schmieder's mom had tickets because she worked for Weyerhaeuser, so I was at that game.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, I know. I took my sister, and I didn't stick around, but I know my sister saw Madonna perform there live. I know I had
that's crazy.
NCAA tournaments there. I remember watching the King Bowl. That was a big deal, right? Like the high school state championship football games there. I mean, we always just fell short of playing there, sadly, but our great Auburn football teams. Just football, baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, needless to say, that place was home to just it was just the center of music, sports, arts, and culture in Seattle.
Absolutely. I mean, I went to a Sonics game with Mike Zahn. We got to see Michael Jordan and the Bulls in 1992.
That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Put it there, get as many fans as you can. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I went to that game with you at the Packers game. Was that
God, I was pissed that entire game.
I've never seen. That's the only time, by the way, that I've ever seen a Seahawks game that packed with other fans.
Well, that same year, Josh, I about murdered a freaking Broncos fan, because the Broncos that year, if you recall, that's the era where they're at their Super Bowl greatness. And I'm like, we used to boo these suckers out of the building, and all of a sudden I've got guys in those stupid new blue and orange jerseys when swinging the rubber chicken in my face. I go, you freaking put that chicken in my face, I'm going to throw your ass off the 300 level, motherfucker. Sit down. Pardon my French. Sorry, I kind of lost it there. But I just remember just blowing up. I was ready to kill this guy. We got destroyed because we were not very good at 97 or 98. But that was sad, seeing the Kingdom for the first time in our history filled with more fans from the opposing teams than Seahawk fans.
It was sad.
A frustrating time.
It was sad. Yeah. So
low moments.
Yeah, but there were so many things that were hosted there, like the Final Four championships. The first concert there was Paul McCartney and Wings in June of '76, and there was tons of concerts. Zeppelin, Stones.
Zeppelin?
Yeah. The Who, Beach Boys, Guns N' Roses, Van Halen, Madonna, like you mentioned, and the Beastie Boys, I think it was, wasn't it? Beastie
Boys opened, exactly.
Yeah, so, I mean, we could talk about it for days. There's, all those old school Mariner games where you just go there and just we're just sitting here at a Mariners game watching Alvin Davis, Harold Reynolds, and, going to see Griffey and Randy Johnson at those games, obviously, like, those were amazing too. But
I love that park. Safeco's great, or whatever it's called now. T-Mobile. Once again, stop renaming things, people. But needless to say, like, it just didn't have the same feel as like when you used to go watch, like when we had, Edgar and Tino Martinez, when we would just slug the hell out of the ball and Buhner. I mean, just some of the best moments of Seattle baseball history. And obviously our boy Lee Olson, which couldn't be with us because he's so damn busy. Lee, just get a real job, please. And just teasing. But he was obviously a domer there for years. Like, it's a shame he's not here to talk about all the amazing memories he has in that building as well.
Right. Yeah, man, there are countless stories that we could talk about that happened in the Kingdom when it was still around. But what happened with the Kingdom is that it just got outdated. The old building had just run its course. You have all these other cities around the league that are getting brand new stadiums, nice upgrades, and then you have the Kingdom, where, the ceiling tiles are falling down, and it's still dark and gloomy, and it's just it needed an upgrade. So on March 26, 2000, it was finally demolished. And Ethan, do you remember where you were when that came down?
Yeah, I was at work at Athletic Supply.
Oh, right on.
Legendary place there.
Yeah.
But I remember we had a little TV thing on, and we're just watching it. It was pretty unreal.
Yeah. No, I actually did a viewing party with KISW. We were a little ways away at some park in West Seattle. And yeah, I mean, I just remember everyone cheering, and I was like, you know what? I'm kind of mixed about this. Those are all our memories right there, crumbling down, falling right in front of us. Yeah. Oh well, hey, it had to happen sometime. I'm just happy that I have 2 seats from the Kingdom in my possession as we speak right now. Not too many people can say that. At least I have.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, at least I have some of the history with me. But yeah, do you remember the aftermath of that demolition? Where they're like, it was like Lee was like talking about how there's like just rats running across the streets into other buildings. I'm like, oh, that must have been nice.
Surprised me.
Yeah, must have been nice for like you're like a business owner. Like, oh, that's great. And we have rats.
Watching that documentary that you shared with me, man, just seeing the fact that they could take a building of that size, which is just freaking enormous with all that concrete, and get it to basically fall in its footprint at a much lower profile than they imagined. Sure, there was dust and nothing. I mean, to be honest, that seemed pretty damn amazing that they didn't cause any seismic damage from that much concrete falling down and controlling the vibration. I mean, there was so much science into bringing that sucker down that I just never even thought about, never even really recollected. Yeah.
So amazing. All right, man. So rest in peace, Kingdom, but I'm glad that we actually have the stadium that we do now with Seahawks Stadium, or whatever you call it.
I like Seahawks Stadium. Let's just call it that.
And boom goes the dynamite.
All right, so number 30, the Sea-Duds. Yeah. I always try to explain to people what Seahawks football was like in the 90s.
I would say, you mean the era where I couldn't give away one of my tickets when I had season tickets? Like, people literally found better things to do, and they didn't even make up lame excuses like I have to wash my hair. They just say like, nah, man, I've got better things to do with my time.
I don't think so.
I could tell what we were running by the depth of Chris Warren in the backfield. I'm pretty damn sure the Chiefs or the frickin' Broncos can too.
Yeah.
Oh, it was brutal. It was painful, Josh.
But if you look at the quarterbacks from that era, after Dave Krieg. So I think Dave Krieg played until, 1991 here or something like that?
Yeah.
And moved on to the Chiefs, I believe it was. But the list of quarterbacks who came after Dave Krieg is so long and so painful. I mean, it's bad because essentially before that, you had Jim Zorn and you had Dave Krieg. Those were like our quarterbacks, right?
Kind of the two we had.
Think how amazing that is, by the way. Like, that's
Jeff Kent filling in on a pinch.
Yeah. There's a couple of flickers of bright spots within this list, but basically it's pretty painful.
Yeah.
So essentially this entire list, this entire number 30 Sea-Duds list is all about the quarterbacks who followed Dave Krieg. So you had Jeff Kemp and Callie Stauffer. And again,
good Lord.
I just want to point out too, it's not about, I mean, obviously these guys are major talents because they made it to the NFL in the first place, but once you get to the NFL, man, it is a different league. This is where the big boys play.
Yeah.
And some people, well, they just don't pan out. And there is a long list of people that did not pan out for the Seahawks during this era. So Next up came Mark McGuire's little brother, or big brother. I mean, gosh, he was huge. Remember this guy? Remember the hype on this guy, Ethan? He was like 6'8".
Oh, yeah. I think San Diego State. Was that where he was?
Yeah, San Diego State. He had one of those like sunglass visors. He looked hella cool. He's like, well, this guy's cool. He looks kind of like RoboCop. He's out there throwing the ball. I'm like, damn, this guy's gonna be awesome. Nope. He didn't turn out to be anything.
It's all a cunning lie.
Yeah, and he was actually drafted ahead of Brett Favre at number 16.
Wow.
In the first round.
Let's continue to rub this in, sure.
Yeah, so I think he ended up actually playing 12 games in 4 seasons. So, yeah, that's how he turned out. You remember Stan the Man Gelbaugh?
Good Lord, yeah, from the World League of Football. I think he played for like the London Monarchs or something.
Yeah, right. He was actually good, up in college. I think he actually broke Boomer Esiason's record for yards in a single season. He was pretty good.
Good in the World League too, but that doesn't mean you're ready for the NFL, my friend.
Yeah. And he actually spent a lot of time as a backup in Seattle. And he kind of had that Jeff George look going for him, that kind of like creeper kind of vibe there.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he had that sweet kind of like
sweet
creeper stash that he had, like 70s porn star stash. Kind of like a Joe Nash special.
Right. Yeah, then we have Rick Meyer. Oh, man, the hits, they just keep on coming, man. Rick Meyer was actually pretty decent his first year. Didn't he break some records for a rookie quarterback? It was one of the better rookie quarterback performances that first year.
I'm going to have to trust you on that because, man, all I can remember about that guy is being angry, but you're probably right.
Yeah. I just remember him doing those awesome commercials. All right, this is Rick Meyer.
Yeah.
Come to...
he seems so uncomfortable in any of that, yeah.
He really was. He was so uncomfortable. He looked uncomfortable. He played uncomfortable. He made the fans feel uncomfortable. It was bad. It was just bad. I just remember that draft, man, that 93 draft. I was like, please let the Patriots somehow pick Rick Meyer. I want Drew Bledsoe. I do not want Rick Meyer. Please. And of course, that didn't happen.
Don't get me started.
And then we had John Freeze.
Oh, out of Idaho. Got a Vandal in the house.
Yeah.
Listen, Northwest guy.
Yeah, it's such a cool name. John Deep Freeze. Yeah, great name. Not the greatest player. I remember he had a pretty good arm, actually.
He did. I remember him doing relatively well as a backup in San Diego, if I'm not mistaken, before he came to us. He was definitely serviceable. It's just not the guy you want as your number one guy.
Well,
that's for sure.
It's that era, man. It's that era. So,
that era.
And then towards the later part of the 90s, it didn't end completely horribly because we had Warren Moon. So after doing his tour around North America, up in Canada and down in Houston, he circles back, comes back up to Seattle, came back home. 1997, he had 3,678 yards and 25 touchdowns. And then we had John Kitna. Good old John Kitna. See-woo.
That's right, baby. See-woo in the house. One big cat.
Yeah. And he had a few decent games, but again, he's just, nothing spectacular, so yeah. And then we closed out the decade with Glenn Foley and your boy Brock Heward, 1999 to 2001.
Good old Brock.
Yep. All right, so that was a great era. Great era for the Seahawks in the 90s. There's a lot of great things happened in the 90s for the Seahawks.
So painful to even remember, but I guess we wouldn't be where we're at without going through those experiences as well. So
exactly.
No one would pay to see you perform.
All right, number 29, Mr. Negative. This one's a short one, literally. I don't know if this guy actually realizes how much joy and happiness he's brought us all over the years. I mean, just from the single play alone, it's pretty amazing.
Joy and happiness, Josh? You mean we get joy and happiness out of watching a shitty punt by our shitty team in the late 80s, early 90s? I mean, come on.
I just remember we would always be out on the playground imitating this over and over. And it was that era where it was the late 80s, early 90s. There wasn't too much to be cheering about at that point in time.
No.
But on this date, October 22nd, 1989, Seahawks superstar Ruben Rodriguez is back to punt. And this man and this punt are just so legendary.
Oh, it's legendary.
Yeah,
it's legendary indeed, sir.
It is legendary. So this particular punt was from the 50-yard line. The ball is snapped. And I'm telling you right now, if we can't enjoy superstars having crazy, amazing games. I'll take this part where, it's kind of like football follies. But anyway, the job of the punter at this spot on the field is to kick it as high as possible so you get the most hang time with the best field position. I mean, so that's the goal. That's the goal. So he he definitely kicks it high. He kicks it so high that the announcers are like, wow, it's an extremely high kick. It's straight up in the air. And so much so that if you see the video of this, like the camera guy's completely lost because you don't expect a punter to be kicking a ball like this.
True. I'll be honest, Josh. I thought this bastard was trying to hit the frickin' Kingdom roof, but apparently not.
And the ball, it goes literally straight up in the air, and it hits the ground, and it bounces back for a grand total of -3 yards.
I'll tell you what, man. I mean, we kicked this thing from the 50, you said, Josh.
Yeah.
And it ends up being a -3 yard kick. I mean, my God, they had the ball in our 47. That's possibly the most pathetic thing I've ever heard.
Now, Ethan, there is actually one moment in Seahawks history where that record was beat. It was on November 23rd, 1997, in a game versus the Chiefs. And Rick Tuten, he had actually suffered a groin injury a couple weeks prior. And he kicked a -6 yard punt, but that I don't think that really counts, right? I mean, he's hurt.
No, he's hurt. And to be honest, Josh, I am tired of talking about frickin' punters. Let's move on.
Oh, Ruben Rodriguez. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Negative.
Why are you so negative all the time? What?
All right, so moving on. Next up, we have The Flash. This one is nuts. This one just happened recently.
Yeah.
It was the Seahawks versus the Cardinals in Glendale, Arizona. The date was October 25th, 2020. Quarterback Russell Wilson, well, he's in scoring position. He drops back and he throws a horrible pass intended for running back Chris Carson. And the ball is picked off by free safety and former UW Husky, Budda Baker. And, well, he looks like he's off to the races.
It looks like he's taking it for 6, baby.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he's gone. And he's not no schlub. He ain't no schlub. He's a fast guy, runs a 4.40 or something. But there's one little problem with all this. Seattle has a complete freak of nature on their football team, known as DK Metcalf. And this video was one of the biggest highlights of the entire season watching this thing. It was literally like watching one of those nature videos where the cheetah runs down this poor little animal and the defenseless little guy doesn't even have a chance. That's what this looked like out in the wild.
Yeah, it was exactly that. It looked like a nature film.
Yeah.
The giant predator tracking down some gazelle out in the open field and just taking it down by its neck and devouring it.
Exactly. And watching him from the very beginning of that play, just the split second of turning it on, it's wild to watch that. And he ended up tackling him on the 8-yard line, preventing him from scoring a touchdown. And then Arizona they failed to score, turning the ball over on downs. I mean, this is just insane, man. I mean, that video it's wild. It really is one of those lessons where every coach should play this all the time in films.
Yeah. Just
to show the actual hustle of how much that can actually make an impact if you go full on all the time. Because it's insane. It's insane.
Never give up on a play. Because, I'd imagine even when he first starts running it down, you keep thinking well, that's great effort, but man, you're not going to, and then oh my God, I think he's going to get him.
Yeah.
And then that's a game changer right then and there, just from extraordinary effort.
It's insane. It's wild. Yeah. 99.9% of the population would never be able to catch this guy. But that's DK Metcalf, a.k.a. The Flash.
Run, bitch! Run!
All right, Heath. Up next, bang your head! All right, so this next one is wild, man. So the home games in Seattle, the players could get pretty jacked up. But this next one, man, it takes it to a whole new level. It involves Seahawks fullback Owen Schmidt. And he's being introduced during the pregame lineups.
He
And
was feeling it, bro.
yeah, he was. He's like channeling his inner Latimer from the program during this one.
Starting defense, place at the table.
I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. This guy comes out and he is pumped up. He is just insane. I mean, Ethan, you've seen these guys. I mean, they get nuts. Like, they're so pumped up. Sometimes you just don't.
I've seen all sorts of stuff, man. Yeah.
Like, players are notoriously, they're so pumped up, they don't even know what to do half the time. Like, remember the famous pregame Ray Lewis? He used to come out and just like and do his like thing, and he's like, oh, you just feel that energy. He's like, oh, you know. And this is like even crazier because Owen Schmidt, well, he comes out and he takes his helmet and he bashes it into his head. And it causes blood to gush down his face, and it looks nuts. You're like, this guy's crazy. I mean, he's legitimately crazy.
Well, and how many stitches did they say they had to use to close it up before the game? I mean, that's
Several.
just nuts, man.
Yeah.
Several, yeah. I think they said like Troy Aikman like 6 or 7 or something like that. Like, what the?
Yeah, he had to go. The team doctors had to like sew him up like during the game. So he goes from being introduced to going straight over to be sewn up.
Yeah.
From bashing his head in. His own head.
Haven't touched the other team yet.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Gotta love the intensity, but I'd rather save it for the field. Just me.
Indeed.
Just me. Ethan, have you ever seen anything crazy like this or comparable like that?
Yes. I had a guy that I played ball with at Central named Ryan Sawyer who took his helmet off and destroyed a training table in pregame before Humboldt stayed at their place. Like literally smashed it to like absolute smithereens with his helmet and was just screaming like a caveman the whole time. And I'm like, I'm excited to play, but I don't know about that.
Holy moly. That's wild.
I was like, what the hell just happened? But yeah,
all right,
we won, so I guess it worked.
Yeah, wow. Jesus. Wow.
Did we win that game that Owen Schmidt smashed his head in? I don't even know what game that is.
I have no idea. I mean, that's all I remember from that game.
Yeah, that's understandably so.
Owen Schmidt. Well, I don't remember too much about you, Owen Schmidt, but I do remember that. So, thank you for that highlight.
Place at the table.
All right, moving on. Number 26, the Blackout. All right, Ethan.
These are the days where I would try to beg people to come to games with me, and I couldn't find anyone. So clearly no one cared.
And this is kind of one of those things, too, where it's we're trying to explain to the younger audience what it was like being like a fan back in the day, because the 90s were great in Seattle for a number of reasons, but Seahawks football was not one of them. I mean, it was tough being a Seahawks fan in Seattle. Look, you had everything else. Everything else was great. You had the grunge scene.
Yep.
You had Sir Mix-a-Lot. You had Sonic's basketball.
Yep, but it's all-time great at the time, maybe other than 79, of course.
Exactly. You had the explosion of companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Starbucks. You had
most of them are just on the up and up though too. Because if you remember, Josh, didn't it kind of almost feel like it was a little economically depressed? I mean, unless you worked for Boeing or you worked for a Warehouser, it just seemed like. Other than that, people were just trying to grind out a living, very blue collar. It was a little different era than maybe what Seattle is now.
Absolutely.
Some of those giant corporations.
Absolutely. Those were just starting to come up, like Microsoft, like 95 Windows and all that good stuff. But being a Seahawks fan in Seattle, oh boy. Well, it all started in the late 80s when Nordstrom sold the team to Ken Behring. And we didn't have many superstars on those teams either, so that kind of contributes to this, because if you don't have superstars and your owner doesn't care and you're not winning and you're playing in the dark and gloomy kingdom, who wants to go to the games? Like you said, you're not able to even give these tickets away. So
it was miserable from the standpoint too of like literally, I wasn't joking, Josh, like you can almost tell what we were doing by the depth of Chris Warren in the backfield, and given we had limited options. But it was just frustrating time to be a fan. And like I said, the only games that were sold out were against huge Super Bowl contending opponents. And then 80% of the fans were for those teams, which is like you never thought in a million years you'd see that when through those heydays of the 80s when you're got Monday Night Football against the Broncos or the Raiders and the whole crowd's chanting Elway, no way, and all this stuff, and the Raider Buster t-shirts and the Bronco Busters. And you were horrified in a sense to see this.
Yeah. So what happened was the league had this blackout policy, and that prevented the fans from even seeing their own games on TV. So, and that kind of like works both ways too, because like how are you supposed to get excited about a team or the players if you can't watch them, especially if you're a kid, you know, and your family doesn't have a lot of money, you're not going to these games.
What was like 100 and something mile radius from where the game was at, right? And you had to have like 75 or 80 something % of the tickets sold like 3 days prior. I mean, it was crazy. And a lot of times it felt like the only games we did get to occasionally peak is because one of those major corporations, out of the kindness of their heart, would buy a bunch of seats and give them to their employees just to get a game on television occasionally.
Yeah, it was bad too. And like, you know, like you mentioned, it was hard being a fan because when you're a kid, you want someone to look up to, like a player, like Matt Hasselbeck or Russell Wilson or whatever it might be. But the Seahawks weren't on TV half the time. So you're like, okay, well, I like Barry Sanders. That guy's pretty awesome. I like Dan Marino. He's amazing. Bo Jackson. Oh yeah, these guys are awesome. Like, you know, so you start like, you know, following these other guys. And, you know, how many of our friends growing up had, you know, they were Seahawks fans, but then they had their other team.
Right.
You know
exactly.
what I mean? Like,
we were kind of forced to because of that 90s era. Well, it's so funny. Weird. It's synonymous with that time period of the crappy quarterbacks we just listed too. Huh? Yeah, imagine how that works.
Yep. So just to put this in perspective here, between the years of 1993 and 2003, there were a total of 48 home games that were blacked out. 48. Wow. Think about that. Like, there's only so many football games in a season.
Yeah, you got 8 home games in the regular season, max.
That's insane. So
that is insane.
So the 90s were some pretty dark days for the city of Seattle, literally blacked out. So, yeah.
Maybe the inspiration for Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden joking.
I love it. Love the reference. Love it. So, yeah, you know, the Seahawks.
List here too. You talk about there's so many teams at that time that were popular from the West, you know, that were shown on the West Coast, like the Niners. You know, you got Steve Young's era. You got the Chargers. They make it to Super Bowl and Junior Seau. The Raiders are very popular. I don't know why, because we hadn't been good since 1983. As a guy that was a closet, you know, well, I wasn't a closet. I was a big Raider fan, but like you said, because.
Yeah, because like the West Coast teams, remember, because like they would play all the East Coast games on the, you know, East side, on the East Coast. So
the early time slot.
Yeah, so if your game is blacked out in your area, there's only, what, a couple games on the TV? So, yep, that's how that works. So a question
helped solidify my love of the Raiders is because I loved Howie Long. That's because that's what I could watch if I wasn't going to the games. And there were some of those games that we split tickets with another family or whatever. So, yeah, it was...
you know, going through that list, I literally went through every blackout of all the teams. I think the only team that had more blackouts, home blackouts, was the Raiders because they had to sell out the Coliseum.
Los Angeles Coliseum, yeah. Good luck with that. It's a gigantic stadium.
Yeah, so that's like not even fair.
Yeah. Well, and we were at a point too where we were on the slow decline as well.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, the blackout era, the 90s blackout era, and your Seattle Seahawks, who you are not watching on television.
Lights out!
All right, number 25. Yep. Number 25, from hero to zero. So this next one's tough for me because the first 7 years of this guy's time with the team, he's one of the greatest football players to ever graze a football field. Do you remember him having many issues? And of course, we're talking about the great Earl Thomas.
I'd imagine to believe he's got to be like a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's definitely in the Seattle Ring of Fame, if nothing less. But it would be silly because he's up there with some of the all-time greats to ever play the position. In my opinion.
In his time in the league, he was, if not the best, one of the top 2 or 3 in the league.
Yeah, the style of defense we played with that, you know, kind of cover 3 shell kind of a look and all that stuff. You know, I don't know that we could do some of the things that we did without him being the guy that can patrol the entire back half from hash to hash. I mean, his unbelievable ability to anticipate and close is like none other. I mean, the very few other players in NFL history.
You're throwing down the middle of the field. You're either gonna get hit by Cam, which is not. I don't wish that upon anybody.
No,
or you're gonna get
attacked by a bear.
You're gonna get hit by Earl Thomas, or the ball's gonna be intercepted, or it's gonna be knocked down. I mean, you're gonna have some problems. So, that guy covered a ton of field, and he was one of the biggest reasons why Seattle was so good during that era. it was largely because of Earl Thomas. That's how good he was. So I think it was his 8th year in when things really started to unravel for Mr. Thomas. So it was week 16 in Dallas in 2017. It was following a 21-12 win by the Seahawks. And Earl Thomas, well, he runs up to Coach Jason Garrett while heading up into the locker room. And he puts his arm around it and he says, you know what? If you all have the chance, come get me. And, well, this was on video, I believe.
Wouldn't surprise me in that time and age and era.
Yeah, and, you know, if you think about this logically, yeah, he grew up as a Cowboys fan as a kid. I mean, I'd love to play for the Seahawks if I could have, you know. His friends and family, they're probably all still down there. The weather's probably nicer, you know. Like, it's not probably nicer, it's nicer. So yeah, and I'm just thinking of a player like that grew up there and whatever knows the area and it's America's team, whatever.
Yeah. But I have to imagine at home to the Seahawks fan, Josh, this had to feel like a deep betrayal.
Oh yeah, man, we're buying your jerseys, we're buying $200 tickets to watch you play football, we're cheering for you. Come on, man, really? So it really started to go downhill there, and then the following season he holds out. And now we're really starting to feel disrespected. The Seahawks reject a trade offer from the Cowboys. And then Earl Thomas finally hits the field on September 30th, 2018 in Arizona. And Earl Thomas breaks his leg. Ethan, you remember this?
Oh, I do. I remember him flipping the bird to the Seahawks bench, and I'm assuming to Pete Carroll or maybe a sign to the entire Seattle management. It was like an all-time low moment. It's like, are you kidding me, dude? Like, can you be more of a douchebag?
I was like, what is going on with this guy? He's not usually the vocal jerk-off. He's not like the guy that's always, doing stuff to, draw attention to himself.
He's kind of a dependable leader in the back for us, man. I almost kind of felt like he was the one that kind of, kept the other homeboys kind of in line, or kept the other, DBs we had back there that can also be pretty flamboyant, especially Richard Sherman, with his mouth and stuff like that. But
yeah, so
now he's kind of
it's weird.
Lost his mind, it seemed like, yeah.
So then his leg heals up. He's out of here. He's heading to the lovely city of Baltimore. And
Mr. Lang gets weirder.
Yeah. And he never meshes well with the team. I guess, he was fined several times for skipping meetings and showing up late. And on a couple occasions, he full on just left the team. And Earl's career all but came to an end after a fight with teammate Chuck Clark. And Thomas was sent home by the Ravens, and then he was later cut by the team. So this isn't ending well for Mr. Thomas.
Yeah.
So you remember what happened after that? Like in 2020 last year?
I remember an amazing story.
What was that?
He was found, I believe, playing hide the pickle in a bed with another woman, and I think his wife, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe some other family are the ones who find him.
Yeah, his wife found him in bed naked with another woman and his brother and another woman or something like that. Or
so there was a couple of women and a couple dudes. This sounds like Roman orgy style.
Right? I'm like, what? Yeah, so
wow.
His entire legacy, well, it's been tarnished for now. Time heals pain, but it's crazy how that went, man. But he's always going to be a legend.
Shame. Yeah, it's a shame because he is honestly such a big piece of the success we had and such an important part to this franchise. You just wish it would have ended better. And for his sake, for his legacy, for the Seahawks, all parties involved.
Indeed. From hero to zero. For now.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
Number 24, the strongest man. All right, so we have a fun one here. So it's kind of a palate cleanser after that last one. Another punter. But unlike the last punter, this one was one of the most popular guys in the team back in the day, which isn't necessarily a good thing because, to be a very popular player, you got to see him play a lot, and this guy played a lot.
Well, this corresponds right with those 90s we were talking about. Well, we had no star players other than Cortez Kennedy.
We had a player.
Bad when your punter's a star player.
Yeah, our punter, Rick Bootin' Tuten. What a great name, by the way.
That's a great one.
And he played for the Hawks from 1991 to 1997. And in 1992 alone, he punted for a team record 108 times.
That is so painful to even hear. As you put here, the fourth in all-time NFL history for the most punts in a single season. That about sums it up. That's like the 90s in a nutshell.
It's so bad. So in 1995, he actually led the league in yards per punt, averaging 45 yards per punt.
That's impressive.
But possibly his biggest claim to fame came in 1998 when he was named the NFL's strongest man, pound for pound, by Flex Magazine. What do you think of that?
It's crazy that sounds. That doesn't surprise me because usually punters aren't the largest or heaviest guys.
Yeah.
So if they do have that extra time because they're clearly not working on like position skills, they spend a lot of time in the weight room. Like, do you remember our kicker from high school, a little guy named Greg DeBolt?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so Greg ends up obviously like great wrestler, great athlete. I mean, he got freaking yoked. Like that guy had like a 400-pound bench by like his sophomore year in college, and he's punting for, he punted for Idaho. He's the one that punted for Pittsburgh, the University of Pitt, that got in the fight with LeVar Arrington, where LeVar Arrington comes at him and he like absolutely just chumped him in front of God and country because the guy's a pro wrestler that has a 400-pound bench. This doesn't surprise me like it might surprise others.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, the strength coaches for the Seahawks told the publication that Tuten was able to bench 445 pounds at one rep.
That's impressive.
And being that he only weighed 218 pounds was fairly impressive. So, that was a 2.04.
2.04 strength quotient rating, which is very impressive because if you get even close to 1, that's considered like pretty solid.
Right.
My son talks to me about these things because he's a meathead.
Yeah. Yeah, so he beat out linebacker Mark Fields. He beat out a linebacker.
That's impressive with a 2.02 rating.
Yes.
Good
wild,
Lord.
Man. Yeah, so awesome. Yeah, in Tuten, I think he just died like recently. Yeah,
I can't imagine it was roid related. I don't know. That's a horrible thing to even put out in the universe.
I don't know. I think it was just some. I don't even know. There's not a lot of information about Rick Tuten out there, but
that's a shame.
Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Rick Tuten, the NFL's strongest man.
Rest in peace, Ricky T.
I'm Han.
I'm France.
And we want to pump you up.
All right, number 23, bring the noise.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So anyone who's friends with me knows that I've attended quite a few Seahawks games back in my day.
Yes, you have, sir.
And I go to the games with my friends back in the 90s and, with my dad back in the 80s and you as well. Here. Yep. And, whatever the stadium was, Seahawks Stadium, Quest Field, CenturyLink. I haven't got a Lumen yet.
I bet it'll feel so different.
Yeah. But, so I feel like I have some cred in this game, but there are a ton of games that could be brought up on this list, but no single game that I've ever been to over the years was as loud and crazy as the NFC Championship game versus the Carolina Panthers in January of 2006 at Quest Field. And I'm going to explain a little bit why this statement is true and valid. And you can let me know if you agree with me on that. So, first off, this was it. This was the game that we needed as Seahawks fans to bring everything we had on that day. If we win this game, we're going to the Super Bowl. And as fans, we have a chance to make a real impact in this game. I mean,
this is the first championship game we've ever had in Seattle. Like, we had an AFC championship game way back in the day, but that was on the road, I believe, when we lost to the Raiders, right?
Yep. So if we win this game, we are going to the Super Bowl. Yeah. So, and I'd always tell people, if I come to work and I cannot talk on Monday, I know I did my job. But if I can talk,
you're a failure.
I am a failure. So,
yeah, buddy, I hear you. That's impressive.
Yeah. So I did everything I could. I made sure that I got to bed early. I made sure I wasn't drinking as much before the game. My voice is going to be fresh.
Yeah.
And as fans, we took this personally because we had been waiting too damn long to screw this one up. And I mean, dude, you would have thought that our family members were playing on the field that day. We were so into the game. We were laser focused. We were not going to let up. It was nuts. So, come game time, the fans were absolutely relentless. It was nonstop. And this place was rocking, man. It was rocking. So
I
basically,
can remember just seeing you posted the YouTube of the actual game or gave me the link. And when you first go to that feed, Joe Buck is like even going like, my God, it's loud in here. Like he can't even hear himself think. And he makes a comment about that. And that's before kickoff even. Like as you're saying, that place was like rocking.
It was nuts, man.
Start to finish.
Because listen, I've been to almost every big game. And the reason why myself and many others proclaim this game as the loudest game in Seattle history is because in 2006, you still had the old school fans, man. Like we were talking about this before where, you're still able to buy tickets. These were still, the rough, real fans, like mostly blue collar, working class. Like these guys, football was their life. You have like these people now that, football is cool, but it's an event, like you buy tickets. You buy tickets for like $250. Like these guys aren't going to those games anymore. Like
millennials.
You know what I mean? But like, but think about that. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like these guys, like literally, like they would work out on like the dock or something. Like, and then they're going to the game.
Hombres.
Yeah. So
I remember that scary Krieg used to hang out with on the 300 level before they stopped coming because we were terrible in the 90s.
Absolutely. and another thing, like. Back in these old days, like this is like the very tail end of that kind of like that era, but there weren't a lot of females at these games. It was a lot of like males, and
it was a scary environment, Josh. I got jumped at the piss trough at the freaking Kingdom because I had Raiders gear. Like I said, I was a Raiders fan, love the Seahawks too, but because I just pissed off my dad so much, I was a Raiders fan. And I was in Raiders gear at that Monday Night Football game that Bo ran over Boz, and I'm pissing at the P troughs at the 300 level, if you recall. You remember those nasty things.
Yeah.
And I turn around, and there's a bunch of drunk dudes that they're ready to try and fight me. And
Raider
I just ended up
scary,
pushing
man.
one drunk guy over and ran for my life and found my dad and go, Dad, we got to get out of here.
Yeah, Raider games, man, they were always the worst too. Like the rivalry was just awful.
But they were scary dudes is the point you're making. There were some blue collar, scary, half-drunk thugs.
Yep. And, and if you did see, women there, it was like, all right, it's like, does she drive a truck?
They were scary dudes.
Yeah. So I just gotta say, like that game was so loud, my ears were ringing. Like after that game, it was like I was at a loud concert. You know what I mean? Like so.
Yeah.
Now when they later went for the record, years later, I think it was, I don't know which games it was. It just seemed like it was more manufactured than anything to me.
Yeah, it's not genuine.
If they actually brought in the moment, if they brought in the world record people for that game, we would easily have that record still. Mark my words.
I shattered it.
All right, so that was Bring the Noise.
My God, it is loud in this place.
All right, number 22, the Diehards. This next stat is pretty insane.
Oh, I couldn't believe this when I heard that because I love these three guys. Like this is the Seattle defense back in the day, man.
This is wild. So I remember you telling me after college how beat up your body was after football.
Yeah.
You were exhausted. And you were like almost relieved that it was finally over because didn't you say your body it was so beat up?
Yeah, just so much nerve damage and other injuries. And part of it was just I probably could have done better things to prepare myself. But yeah, I was beat up and I was just ready to move on. I was an old man too, Josh. Not many people go to school for 7 years. Yeah, they're called doctors, and I wasn't a doctor. But yeah.
Yeah, so with stories like that, it only makes this next one even crazier. And like we were saying, if college is the best of high school, the NFL is the best of college, these guys are bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. I mean, simply put, they're the best of the best. So here's why this stat is so incredibly ridiculous. Between the years of 1982 and 1991, Jacob Green, Joe Nash, and Jeff Bryant all played together on the same defensive front for the Seattle Seahawks for nearly a decade. How insane is that stat, Ethan?
It's so impressive. And the fact that they were productive. These weren't just like three guys that kind of just held it down. Like they were unbelievable in a 3-4 defense of all things too, where you usually think of like those 80 styles where you got guys like Lawrence Taylor and like some sort of a rush outside back. I mean, these guys generated sacks and were continually productive during that time.
It's insane. It's insane. I mean, I think this should be talked about more in the NFL. Like,
absolutely.
How is this not like a bigger story? Again, you have to chalk it up to
Seattle.
We're in Seattle. Yep. So, being in Seattle in the 80s, look, we could only count on so many things in Seattle. Steve Largent, he's going to be catching the ball. Mama Blue, she's going to be up in the stands.
Yeah.
And the defensive line of Joe Nash, Jacob Green, and Jeff Bryant, well, they're going to be showing up to play. So,
well, and you heard why they got the nickname the Diehards, because they were like the battery of the Diehard. They always start. Because they always started every game. I thought that's a great nickname.
It's great.
That's why they got the Diehards.
It's great. Love those guys, man. Love those guys. They are true Seattle legends, and they should get a lot more credit than they do, because that stat alone. I mean, think about playing all those games. Like, that's insane. You're playing on that level, that many games together as a unit? Yeah. That's wild, man. That's wild.
These guys should all three be in the Ring of Honor, and only, as I see here, Jacob Green is in it. And to be honest, like, Joe Nash's mustache alone should be worthy of the Ring of Honor. It was amazing. But yeah, it's just like those three, and given Jacob Green was definitely probably the one with the most sacks of production, but man, all three of them are definitely deserving. We need to fix that.
Absolutely. Get those guys in there, man. Like, they're out of the players you remember from back in the day, those guys are definitely up there, man. Like, you have the Kurt Warners, you have the Steve Largents, but those guys always come up in conversation because they were always there.
So, another guy that broke my heart, and this is not necessarily tied to the podcast. Remember how good Fred Young was? And then we let him go to the Colts because of Bosworth. And like, Fred Young was like, just another underappreciated, amazing talent that we let slip through our fingers, which kills me. But
the list is long.
Thank you for letting me that.
This is long.
Yeah, the list is long, brother.
All right, so those are the diehards. Get them in the Hall of Fame. Are you guys listening? Is everybody listening out there? The least we could do is get them in the Seahawks Ring of Honor. Joe Nash, Jacob Green, and Jeff Bryant.
Die Hard. More power when you need it most.
Number 21, Beergate. This is
that was hilarious.
This is kind of a funny one. You
have to throw a fun one.
You have to throw these in there, right? So, this one. This is a pretty shocking video when I first saw it. And for a short moment in time, the video actually went viral. Everyone was like sending this to people. Like, I was like, wait, what's going on? And the reason for this is because you're at an NFL game. And when you're at an NFL game and you're drinking beer, I mean, those beers are expensive. I mean, they're
damn straight. You gotta refinance your home to afford a couple, I think.
They're like $10 beers, man. Like, so it's no joke. The date was January 8th, 2011. I believe it was the Saints versus Seahawks. And this guy noticed, I don't know how he noticed this, but
he was just super impressed. The guy was clearly like a math genius. It might have been Bill Nye the Science Guy in disguise, because the way he could just size up volume of 2 cups that quickly is absolutely impressive.
It was crazy. So this guy notices that there's something very peculiar going on here. Him and his buddy notice that the large beer cup that they were selling was actually the same exact size and could fit the exact same amount of beer as the small cup.
Yeah, just a little bit taller, but must have been a little more narrowed down, like the actual, the length, the shaft of the beer cup. I don't know what the hell to call it.
And the vendors are charging $1.25 more for the large beer, right? So he's demonstrating this by pouring water back and forth between the 2 glasses. And it's fascinating because in the end, they're always going to win no matter what. But they're kind of like ripping themselves off by selling the same amount of beer in a small cup as they do in a big cup. I don't know. I just thought
marketing.
It's just hilarious.
Fun that somebody caught them on that. I wonder if they quickly fixed that, or I could even see this sounds terrible. You'd love to think someone had some evil mastermind. Couldn't you just see some person in charge of concessions just going, well, this cup's bigger. Right. And not even really looking at the volume,
totally.
I probably did it on purpose, but yeah.
Yeah, so that was Beergate. And sir, whoever you are, hilarious. And thank you for pointing that out, because we, the fans, always want to know when we are getting ripped off or if we're getting a good deal. So there you go.
Hold it. Call the cops.
All right, number 20. Drop it like it's hot. Yeah, this one sounds like a fun one, right?
This sounds like Seahawks that can't hang on to the football. That doesn't sound good at all.
Oh, you're absolutely right. So remember when we were talking about the 90s and how hard it was to be a Seahawks fan? It seems like a fun theme that we have going on with our list here. But in many ways, it was just as frustrating watching the Seahawks play in the early 2000s, because now we are under the control of the legendary Mike Holmgren. And we actually had a quarterback controversy going on at this point in time with Trent Dilfer, who had just won the Super Bowl with the Ravens. Trent Dilfer. And Matt Hasselbeck. good old Matt Hasselbeck, who was the backup to Brett Favre, fresh out of Green Bay. So along with this quarterback controversy thing going on, you had our wide receiver crew. And I was actually at a lot of these games, and I gotta tell you, they were some of the most frustrating bunch of guys that I've ever seen. Still to this day. I don't know if you were at any of these games, but
this is more the era where I was away, but still watching most of these and going,
Ethan,
you've got to be kidding me.
It was so bad. So the two biggest culprits during this era were Darrell Jackson and Corn Robinson. And these guys, they were good. They were spectacular receivers when they would actually catch the ball. These guys would drop so many huge passes. It was ridiculous. I don't know. Maybe it was just more that they would drop clutch passes during the most important part of a game. Like, oh, yes, we got a first down. Oh, he's wide up. Oh, he dropped it. Oh, okay. And I remember these two quarterbacks, they were fighting it out. They were trying to win that starting position at a quarterback.
Yeah.
And it wasn't making it easy on these guys because they were throwing some good balls and they were just getting dropped left and right. And I always wondered to myself, was I just imagining this, or did they really drop as many balls as I thought they did? So I decided to go back and put some stats together, do a little calculation on my own. And this is what I came up with. So between the years of 2002 and 2004, Corn Robinson, he had a clutch receiving percentage of 52%. So basically half the time you're throwing to this guy, he's not catching it, right?
Yikes.
Darrell Jackson, he wasn't much better. He had a clutch percentage of 54%. So I don't know if this counts, like, even if you're throwing in their direction, they're not catching the ball, but either way, it's not good.
Well, like, what a different era compared to, like, the times of, like, having a Doug Baldwin or, you know, a Curse that just, like, made every big catch, it felt like.
Right.
You know?
And I remember even Bobby Ingram, who was the most clutch receiver at that point in time, like, during that era.
Yeah, that's saying something.
Even he would start dropping balls. So he was just, it was so...
contagious.
Oh, God. I was, like, getting so angry. But so just to put this in perspective for comparisons, and I'm going to do the most drastic one we could possibly think of, but Jerry Rice in his prime, between the era of 1994 and 1997, Jerry Rice had a clutch percentage of 76%. That's almost 80% of the time he's being thrown the ball by Steve Young, I'm guessing at that time, right? Yeah, Steve Young. He was catching the ball 80% of the time almost. So
that sounds about right.
So this lovely era ended with, I mean, you really couldn't have asked for a more storybook ending to the way these guys played. It was the playoffs versus the Rams in January of 2005. And it came down to the very last play. Matt Hasselbeck scrambles around. He's trying to find an open receiver. Oh, Bobby Ingram for the touchdown. I mean, we went nuts, Ethan. We were all jumping up. Hawks win. It's time to celebrate. We are dancing and advancing to the playoffs. It is a party. But wait a minute, what's going on? Why is everybody stopped? Wait, what happened to the party? What's going on? And we all look back up at the screen to see what the replay is. And we're like, wait a minute. Something happened. He dropped the ball. He dropped it. I mean, we were literally all just celebrating.
It was a true Greek tragedy.
He dropped the ball. Very poetic. I mean, it was it was great.
Perfect end to that era, like you said.
Yeah, and I just remember walking back to our vehicles after the game, and we're heading down the alley and just shaking our heads, going, of course that's how it ended. But I was thinking to myself, wait a minute, we had Jerry Rice. We had the greatest receiver of all time on our team, and we chose not to throw to Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
And we threw to one of the guys that, that drops balls. So, yeah, so that was fun.
Seattle, baby.
Yep.
Noticing a theme here?
Yep.
Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot.
All right, next up, the Bar Brawl. Oh, the Bar Brawl. Yeah.
If we had a separate list of the all-time boneheaded moves, this would probably be on there.
Yep. Here you go. This is a crazy moment, man. So, Seahawks safety Ken Hamlin, solid player out of the University of Arkansas. So, in 2004, he finishes third on the team with tackles with 79 and a career high of 4 interceptions. And then came 2005, and the Seahawks, they're rolling, man. After a blowout victory over the Texans on October 16th, 2005 in Week 6, Hamlin Hamlin decides, you know what? It's time to celebrate, man. Time to celebrate this victory and let's have some drinks. So him and his girl decide to head out to Larry's nightclub in Pioneer Square. And dude, as much as I love the bars, there's been so many moments where, just people are acting stupid.
Right.
And if you
got liquor in people, you got alpha males who don't handle their liquor well. I mean, it's the perfect recipe for something stupid to happen.
Absolutely. And Hamlin, I guess he placed a hand on some other guy's shoulder, which is that right there could
could trigger someone.
And he's like, hey, excuse me. He's probably trying to get by or something like that, And I guess the guy told Hamlin to stop pushing him. Could have been one of those times where he puts his hand on his shoulder and someone pushes him from behind and
right.
So, of course, one thing leads to another. They start pushing each other, and according to the report, Hamlin then punched the guy in the face, prompting another guy to knock Hamlin down to the ground. And then witnesses told police that someone else hit Hamlin a couple times with a street sign. So, Hamlin's sitting there. He's in, critical condition. And then he's rushed to the hospital. He has a fractured skull, a small blood clot, bruising of the brain. And that guy never played another down of football in Seattle again. So,
God, that's crazy.
Yeah, fun time. But the crazy thing about that story is that the assailant was mysteriously found dead a couple days later.
How is this not like Keith Morrison in a Dateline? All over this. This sounds fascinating, and I want to hear that guy narrate the whole thing.
Exactly. So that's
then he was found dead. Whoa.
Yeah. So weird, right? Kind of spooky, but yeah, it's
not a happy story, but definitely a crazy ending and fits into crazy moments of Seahawks history. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And just to let everybody know, Ken Hamlin actually made a full recovery and ended up playing for the Cowboys for a couple of years before retiring.
Okay, dummy. Before this game, you was just a plain dummy, but after the night, you be a broke dummy.
All right, next up on our list, here we go. The Freight Train. All right, so here we go. One of the most exciting Seahawks to watch in franchise history. It's not even an opinion. It's a fact. This man stood 6'3" and weighed 243 pounds. He was drafted out of Virginia Tech in 2010 and one of the key players of the old Legion of Boom. Of course, we're talking about the legendary strong safety, Cam Chancellor.
Bam Bam Cam.
Yep. One of the craziest hitters in NFL history.
In an era where it wasn't easy to be a hitter either, which is really impressive.
Yeah, you're not kidding. You have to be really calculated and very accurate and very precise if you're going to hit like he did. So, his entire career is like watching one of those old school highlight reels from NFL films. It's insane. Yeah. You could easily see one of those old school narrators like Cam Chancellor. I can't even do it.
The great John Facenda.
Yes, John Facenda.
Yeah. Yes. Like the Dick Butkus one. I still remember watching my Crunch Time video over and over again.
One of the greatest videos ever. Yeah,
Dick Butkus. Well, he's in a Ronnie Lott, just from that kind of mold of just this guy that made people think twice about coming over the middle to catch a football because you might end up literally decapitated.
Exactly. But his entire career was like watching a human highlight reel. This guy was just insane.
It's like a middle linebacker playing free safety. It's just incredible.
Absolutely. And there's, one defining moment in Chancellor's career that is really one of the greatest hits in NFL history. I mean, just to paint a picture of Vernon Davis, this is not a small man.
No, it's a freak of nature, stud athlete, tight end for the San Francisco 49ers, screaming down from our defensive position down our left sideline.
Yeah.
And a ball that looks like it's over the top in perfect position. And so Cam's got one choice, and that choice is if I'm going to nail this guy and do it legally, you got to try to keep your head out of it. You got to hit it with the shoulder, and you got to hit right in that midsection. It's all these defensive receiver rules and all that stuff like that. And he tattoos him. And I believe they throw flags, don't they?
Yeah, they threw a flag on that one. Yep.
And it was errant.
But because it's so perfect and it's in real time. And it's in real time. So you just, if you're right next to him watching that play, you're like, oh, well, that's got to be a penalty. He's like, he literally almost decapitated him,
Yeah.
So I get how they called the penalty because if you watch it in slow motion, it's a perfect hit. I mean,
yeah, where he hits, the separation of the ball from the ball. I mean,
it's just wow.
You can tell the Cam knew it too. He pops up like electricity's going through his body after he just jumps up like woo. You know, you could just. It was just electrifying.
Yeah. So he jumps up, but Vernon Davis
did not jump up.
He later said of the hit that he got hit so hard that he got up and he didn't even know where he was going. He was like, I didn't even know what happened. I got hit by a very big man.
Yeah.
And so it was insane. So that hit alone right there, that would make the list. I mean,
well, and if I'm not mistaken too, doesn't I swear it's the guy that drives me nuts, but he's a good color guy, I guess. He's the one that's even saying like that's illegal. Like he's fighting on behalf of Cam on the replay of it. Like, you couldn't ask for a more textbook. Chris Collinsworth. God, Chris Collinsworth is.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I mean he does his job well, but he sometimes annoys the hell out of me.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's the one that was basically being a lawyer for Cam on national television, and there was just no way around him. It was such a legal, beautiful hit.
Yep. Again, they have that option to see it in super slow motion.
Yeah, it's easier to tell then.
Exactly. So Cam, good Lord, Cam was just nuts. He was so amazing.
Yeah.
So that was the freight train himself, Mr. Cam Chancellor. Moving on, number 17, the Sharpie.
That's what makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit, Josh.
Me too, man. But it has to be on there, dude. It was
I love me some me.
We got to mix these up a little bit. So
yeah,
we had to throw this one in there, but just because it's too creative not to put on there. Like,
I can see that.
The date was October 14th, 2002, and it's week 6. And the Seahawks are playing the 49ers at Seahawks Stadium in Seattle. Still called Seahawks Stadium.
The glory days.
Yeah, exactly. And wide receiver for the 49ers, Terrell Owens, or T.O., well, he catches a ball over Seahawks corner Shaun Springs, and he jogs into the end zone and then proceeds to pull out a Sharpie. And he signs the ball and he hands it off to a fan in the stands. And it's like, I was like so pissed when this happened, dude. I was like, wait a minute. Because I think they replayed it a couple times because at first you couldn't tell what was going on. Or I didn't even know if it was on.
Not from just watching just the regular live feed. I don't think you quite understand what the heck was going on there.
But T.O., man, he was a beast in himself too. Like, I mean, he was definitely one of the best receivers of the entire era.
He's definitely maybe one of the best athletes to ever play the position.
It's insane.
I mean, just if he wasn't such, I mean, without being disrespectful to the guy, because he was such a talent, but he was just such there was just the weird aspects of like the showboat showman, but at the same time, just the not very reliable and a little too selfish at times. It's not a really good team player, I guess is the way I would chalk it up.
Yeah.
Because that the old coach in me just gets driven nuts by that, because, I think, Bob Jones disciples as we are, you never show up the opponent. You never do things to make them, there's all these things that were instilled in us from day one. And that's pretty much what Terrell Owens lived to do, was to try to show up the opponent and embarrass them. And so it never hurt my feelings when he did get knocked into next week or something else.
I agree. So, yeah. But, looking back, it's kind of funny just because it's a highlight, and
yeah, it is.
I'm not back in that 2002 era where I'm watching that and all angry.
Yeah, pissed off and angry.
But
Plus, we were much younger and dumber at that time, too, Josh. A lot more piss and vinegar in our veins.
Exactly. All right, so there you have it. Terrell Owens and his stupid little Sharpie prank.
Is that a pen? Yeah, he had a pen in his sock, and he pulled it out and autographed the ball.
All right, so moving on. Number 16, the confrontation. So this next one brings us back to Super Bowl 48 versus the Denver Broncos in 2014. It was media week, and Seahawks wide receiver Golden Tate is being interviewed, and he was being asked some questions by a reporter, and one of the questions was about his fellow teammate, wide receiver Percy Harvin. And if you remember back during the season, he was having a lot of issues. I think he was he was injured. He was having trouble staying healthy. But when he was on the field, he was nuts. He was like one of those playmakers, like he was
supremely talented. I think he even later came out and said he was really suffering from anxiety and some mental health issues that, So, I mean, can understand that now in hindsight a little bit.
Yeah. So Golden Tate, he actually responds to the reporter and says something to the effect of, hey, look, we can get the job done with or without Percy Harvin. We have a lot of talent on this team, which is kind of like the right thing to say. Like, don't know. I mean, I'm not a Golden Tate guy, but I mean, you know, if you watch that interview, he's not like over the top, like, you know, ripping on him. But
no, I guess the one thing you could say is maybe that's more something for the coaches to say, though, and leave it, you know, like as a teammate, you should probably back your teammates.
Right. Yeah, hey, we hope that he could join us on Sunday, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, he goes back into the locker room, and Percy Harvin's waiting for him. And he's not happy. He is pissed off that he kind of threw him under the bus. And they exchanged some words, and things got a little out of hand. So Ethan, what's the legend that ended up happening here?
Percy ended up punching Golden Tate in the face, as we understand it, and then whether he throws him or he knocks him or suplexes, we're not exactly sure. He puts Tate's ass into a garbage can. And then right after this, they had to go take the photo for the team photo for the Super Bowl. So if I'm not mistaken, one of them had a black eye.
Don't you wish there was video of this? Like,
oh man. That would be just one of the things, like, for all the times you don't have someone with a cell phone recording this, come on, guys. This would have been fun to see.
Oh.
Would have been like straight out of like the back room scenes of like a WWF fight from our childhood or something.
Totally. You're right. I mean, it really does. It sounds like one of those WWE moments where you see that they're backstage getting in a fight.
Yeah, exactly.
But this really happened?
I know that sometimes... You know, truth is stranger than fiction, man.
So hilarious. So there you have it. That was the confrontation with Percy Harvin and Golden Tate. I guess it could have also been known as something else.
Call it garbage can dunk.
The garbage can dunk. There you go. Boom.
You got knocked the fuck out, man.
All right. So number 15, the Verdi is in.
Oh, good Lord. This one is just
another
sums up the late 90s here.
Another one that really angers me. So I remember this one like it was yesterday, unfortunately. I was watching this in Ellensburg.
I was still home in Auburn because I was a winner.
Stop it. Anyway, the date was December 6, 1998. And the Seattle Seahawks are facing the New York Jets. And if the Seahawks can win this game, they have a chance to go to the playoffs. I mean, this is a big deal. But
yeah,
if you remember this year, this is the year of referee Phil Luckett. And
yes.
And Ethan, you remember Phil Luckett, right?
Yeah, he's the guy that on the coin toss in the Steelers-Lions Thanksgiving Day game, if I'm not mistaken, like mishears, like, and you can clearly hear it on audio. Bettis said tails or heads, whatever he said, and Luckett doesn't hear it and says the opposite, and so they lose the overtime coin toss, if I'm not mistaken, and like Bettis is pissed, and it's ridiculous.
Bettis is like shocked. He's like literally looking around, like, wait a minute, what? Like, yeah, he says Bettis says tails, and Luckett says heads is the call. He repeats it, says it the opposite, and he calls heads. And Bettis goes, what? He flips his shit. He's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And like, that became a very big controversial moment because didn't the call stand?
Yeah.
That's just mind-blowing. It's insane. But I think that what happened was during this era, they had gotten rid of instant replay because I think they did this for time for the networks because the games, they had been running long. So they wanted to make sure that these games stayed on track, on schedule, on time, and instant replay had actually been absent from the NFL for years by this point in time. So in all reality, we could probably thank Phil Luckett for the NFL bringing back instant replay.
Probably true, yeah.
Because the very next week, Phil Luckett and his crew, they were assigned to the Seahawks game at Giant Stadium versus the Jets. Now, this game actually had playoff implications for both teams, the Jets and the Seahawks. So here we are. It's the fourth quarter, and the Seahawks are leading 31-26 with just 27 seconds remaining on the clock. It's 4th and goal. It's down to this play, man. The ball is snapped. Vinny Testaverde, he keeps the ball, and he dives in for the touchdown. The Jets are up. They are going to win. And Ernie France calls for the touchdown, and Phil Luckett, he approves it. But the replay shows otherwise. I mean, this play is just awful. If you watch this, you could clearly see that Vinny Testaverde's helmet was not even across the goal line.
No, it's clearly not in. Clearly, but there is no instant replay at this time.
No instant replay. Everybody at home is watching this.
The announcers lose their mind.
Oh, the announcers were pissed. I mean, they were like, wait a minute, what? Like, he's not even close to being that. And that became a big factor in the NFL bringing back instant replay over the offseason. The owners voted to bring it back. So because of Phil Luckett and his team and Vinny Testaverde, we could kind of thank them for bringing back instant replay. So there you go. Phil Luckett and Vinny Testaverde.
What is a man from Nantucket who had a dick named Phil Luckett?
Yeah, so good times. Good times.
Call it plays in there. Heads is the call. He said heads, it is a tails.
Oh, I wish he said tails.
He did.
All right, number 14, the Enforcer.
Another legend.
One of my favorite players of all time, Kenny Easley, a.k.a. the Enforcer. And Easley, he's one of those guys that just does not get the credit that he really deserves. This guy was insanely awesome. And, you know, let's face it, him being overlooked has a lot to do with him being located in Seattle.
Yeah. And you could argue his career kind of was a little short, maybe, due to some of the health issues and stuff.
Yep. So Kenny Easley stood 6'3" and weighed 206 pounds. And this guy he was a force, man. I mean, he hit hard. He had the speed. He had that height where he can just cover all that ground. He was amazing. Like, I remember seeing this video of Ronnie Lott talking about how much Kenny Easley actually inspired him. So that was pretty cool. But Kenny Easley was drafted out of UCLA as the 4th overall pick in the 1981 NFL Draft. He became a 5-time Pro Bowler and the NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 1984, and he was later elected to the NFL Hall of Fame in 2017.
It was so awesome.
And his number 45 jersey is sitting in the Seahawks Ring of Honor as we speak. But his career was actually cut short because he was overprescribed Advil for an ankle injury that he suffered during a game. And they used to have like these dispensers like in the stadium, and you could just pop them like kind of like, they were like candy, And he was reportedly taking like 15 to 20 of these pills a day for like a 3-month period to reduce the swelling that was being caused. Think about that, man. 15 to 20? So that ended up resulting in the eventual cause of kidney failure. And man, he was a young guy. I mean, geez. Can you imagine? You're like a young guy, an elite athlete, and here you are going on dialysis? That's crazy. Insane. Yeah, so this ended up not actually going very well. It became pretty nasty. So they ended up settling a lawsuit out of court, and he actually had a kidney replacement because of this. He got a new kidney in 1990. So yeah,
good.
So rightfully so, there was some bad blood between Kenny Easley and the Seahawks organization until Paul Allen came along, and both camps ended up burying the hatchet and mending those wounds.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, like Steve even mentioned, he raised the 12th man flag on December 11th, 2005 before the Hawks game versus the Niners, which is, that's a huge momentous sign of a new relationship being
Exactly.
forged.
So Kenny Easley, a true Seahawks legend. And remember, you used to have that awesome poster, the Enforcer. And I still have that framed at my place. So there you go.
The Enforcer was a classic one.
Yep. So Kenny Easley, the man, the myth, the legend, and all of the above equals the Enforcer.
On behalf of what Kenny Easley has done for us as a team and as a man, I'd like to present him with this game ball.
All right, moving on. Number 13, the Detroit Zebras.
There's another painful memory.
Yes. So it took 30 years, Ethan. 30 years.
Yeah.
Finally did it. The Seahawks were in the Super Bowl. It was February 5th, 2006. It was a big day for the city of Seattle and myself. because it was on my 30th birthday.
Wow, that's right. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah. Man, I was stoked, man. Huge birthday party at my place. The Rolling Stones were playing the halftime show. The team that I grew up watching was finally going to the Super Bowl. They're going to be the champs, man. This is it. And you know what? Around the league, I don't think many people were actually rooting for Seattle, but you know what? We didn't care because we were used to it. We might as well have been that team up in Alaska because not only do people not know where Seattle is, they don't care. Might as well.
That's what it felt like, didn't it?
Yeah.
The way the press talked about us.
Absolutely. We had that East Coast bias thing going against us, but we kind of had that chip on our shoulder, right?
Yeah.
We didn't give a shit. So this was supposed to be a really good Super Bowl. And this particular Super Bowl was all about Jerome Bettis, the bus. And everybody loves the bus. Everyone loves Jerome Bettis, right?
Hard not to love, right?
Yeah, he's always smiling. He's always having a good time.
Classy guy.
Yeah, he kind of like had a little gut. You know, he's a likable character. And it's probably going to be his last game in the NFL. I mean, it's a great story. It's hard to deny. Oh, and he grew up in Detroit. So he has that going too. He's like a hometown boy. So
yeah, he's returning home.
Yeah, so it's a perfect setup for a Steelers fan or just a fan of the NFL who wants to see a classic feel-good story, But to Seattle fans, we didn't care about any of that. We just wanted to win. And this was tough, man, because the game was essentially a complete disaster from beginning to end. It was straight up abusive. The calls against the Seahawks in this game, I mean, it just seemed like everything went wrong. Everything went against the Seahawks. I mean, Darrell Jackson gets called for a push-off in the end zone. So we lost a touchdown there. Yeah. It's just a mess. I mean, you could just go over the calls. It's going to make me sick if I keep dwelling on this. But, as a Seahawks fan, we all know. We all know what happened during this game. It was just constant. Call after call after call against the Seahawks. It seemed a little shady. I'm just glad that the rest of the country got to see how terrible this actually was. And it always seemed like it was like Seattle against everybody else. And sure enough, after the game, reporters and commentators across the country talked about how terrible it was for the Seahawks and how bad the officiating was. And, talk shows, they were all over it.
Hard to deny.
Even Mike Holmgren after the game said, yeah, we knew it was going to be tough going into this game, but we didn't know we were going to have to go against the guys in the striped shirts as well. So there you go.
That's tough, man. Well, and I mean, it's always unfortunate. It's just a reality of any sport, right? Sometimes the officials are just going to work against you or and I don't think intentionally. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any nefarious, like they were trying to fix the game or any of that crap, or none of that ever came out. But man, it sure was weird just how lopsided that game was, because usually there's bad calls and they go against you, they go for you, and you take the ones you get and you stew about the ones that go against. But this one was just so strange.
It really was. And the pain did not go away for years and years and years until we actually finally won a Super Bowl. But Bill Levy, who was actually the head referee at that game, he was actually visiting the Seahawks training camp in 2010, and he brought it up himself. He knows he made an impact on that game. And I guess he said he had a bunch of sleepless nights over those calls, and that he was going to take that to his grave, essentially. I'm like, wow, jeez, that kind of...
That's refreshing in a way, though, to see once again these guys take their job seriously and it affects them. And yeah, he felt like maybe in hindsight that, he had to put his pride in check and realize that there were definite things to learn from and do better the next time around, which doesn't help us, but at the same time, at least I'd love to see that self-reflection and, acknowledge, not just try to pretend like, get over it, Seattle fans, you're wrong.
Yep.
Like every Steeler fan I know says, and that's why they can blow it out their ass.
All right, kids. Well, that concludes the story of the Detroit Zebras.
This isn't college. You're not at a home conference.
I understand.
This is the NFL, which stands for not for long when you make them calls. Yeah. I'll be selling groceries.
All right, number 12. What could number 12 be? Well, it has to be the Disruptors.
Yeah, the 12s, baby.
Here we go, man. The legendary 12th man, or as in recent years, the 12s. And the term the 12th man, Ethan, what is the 12th man?
Well, obviously there's 11 men on the field, so the 12th man is like when your crowd is so loud, is so interactive, especially when another team is on offense and you can disrupt their ability to hear, think, even hear like the slightest adjustment or audible. I mean, you really hamper the offense and its capabilities, and so it's like having an extra person on the field, an extra defender.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, home field advantage is a real thing in some stadiums.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have places like Kansas City and New Orleans, I mean, where it gets loud. It gets crazy. So it really does affect
Philadelphia, where they might assault you with batteries or a snowball, even if you're Santa Claus. I would be scared to play there.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's fun when it's like that in a stadium. You really, like I said, like back in the day, man, we took it serious. Like we held that pride, man. It was like a badge of honor for us. And no team in the NFL is more known for their fan base than the Seattle Seahawks. And it goes back all the way to the 80s, where it all started, essentially. And that house used to rock, man. That thing was a rocket. The Kingdom was like a madhouse with all the crazy, blue-collar
Absolutely. The wave flying around.
Exactly. They actually retired the 12th man jersey on December 15th, 1984. And I think it was in 1989, just before before those 90s. But it was so loud at one point that they actually received a penalty for being too loud. I mean, think about that. Think about getting...
Yeah, that's insanity.
The refs...
It's so ridiculous.
The refs gave a penalty to the Seahawks fans. Like, that's unheard of. That's amazing. So that's how loud the Seahawks fans were even before the new stadium. And there have been so many games and moments in Seahawks history where the fans have really impacted the game. I mean, probably the most famous is the one on November 27th, 2005 against the Giants.
Yeah.
Where and I was at that game, by the way.
Nice. Contributing.
Yep, absolutely. And the fans that day, we caused 11 false starts versus the Giants. 11 in one game. 11 false starts.
Wow.
Kicker Jay Feely's like missing like 3 field goals. I think they were all towards the Hawks' Nest where we were too. It was so great. Oh, it's one of the greatest games that I've ever been to. It was so fun. Oh, it's like a sunny day. We're all out there just like having a good time, drinking beers, screaming at the Giants. It was so great. But the 12th man has twice set the Guinness World Book of Records for the loudest recorded noise at a sporting event. And the first time they accomplished this was on September 15th, 2013, when they registered a 136.6 decibels against the 49ers, which is fitting. And then again on December 2nd, 2013, during a Monday Night Football game versus the Saints, with a roar of 137.6 decibels. So just to put that in perspective, a jet engine at 100 feet is about 140 decibels.
That's insanity.
It's pretty crazy. Now, in September of 2014, the Chiefs, they actually ended up breaking Seattle's record of 142.2 decibels. But their stadium also holds 7,676 more people than our stadium does. So do the math on that.
Well, and like you said, to be honest, wouldn't it be nice to get a genuine reading, like say during that NFC Championship game that you're talking about in 2006? Just to get like a real, like a in the moment, true passion, rather than some sort of canned attempt to get it,
100%, and I bet you it was louder than that. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. So yeah, the number 12 has to go to the Seahawks fans because we are the 12s. And special shout out goes to Mama Blue, who is the greatest Seahawks fan of all time, bar none.
Well, the only thing I could maybe refute that with, Josh, and this might be controversial, but if Paul Allen isn't a fan of our team and decides not to come and save our team at the 0 hour, and I know we'll get to that, I'm just saying you could make an argument if Paul Allen, even if he's not Mama Blue, and Mama Blue in terms of like day in, day out in the stadium, there is no question. But man, Paul Allen has got to be one of the best fans too, just for what he did and what he meant to our team, thank God.
Love Paul Allen. Oh, rest in peace, Mr. Allen. All right, that does it for the Disruptors, the 12s, the 12th man, or just simply put, the loud, obnoxious, annoying fans of Seattle. I'll take it all.
If the noise persists, The defense will be charged with a timeout.
All right. Number 11, the Fail Mary. The Fail Mary.
It's just embarrassing, but thank God for once the ball broke our way.
The date was September 24th, 2012 at CenturyLink Field in Seattle, Washington. It was the game against the Packers and the Seahawks on Monday Night Football. And Russell Wilson is our new, young, fresh rookie quarterback. And there's actually a referee lockout going on at this time as well. So they have these replacement refs that are on the field.
I forgot about that piece of it. That's right.
That plays a big part.
Yeah, that's a huge piece of this equation.
So this game actually comes down to the very last play of the game, of course. And here we go. It's the Hail Mary. And Ethan, what is the Hail Mary?
It is a last-ditch attempt where you better say your prayers, Hail Mary, full of grace, and pray to God that somebody on your team catches that ball and comes down with it in the end zone.
Exactly.
You usually see the opposing team's defense back up people, line them across the goal line, just trying to make sure that nobody gets anywhere near catching that football in the end zone.
And just like a Hail Mary, it works 5% of the time.
Yeah, it's probably 5% of the time it works, none of the time.
Yeah, so as with many games with Green Bay, this one comes down to the wire. And it's the final play of the game. Russell Wilson drops back. He heaves the ball downfield. Oh my gosh, we actually might have a chance. Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? Golden Tate comes down with the ball, but wait a minute. The other guy has the ball too. Wait, what just happened? Did Jennings catch that or did Tate catch that?
To me, it looks like the DB has clearly intercepted it, and Tate's just smart enough to get his hands kind of wrapped kind of around it. The other guy's got it up against his chest. It's insanity, but continue, I'm sorry.
Well, no, yeah, the ref calls a touchdown.
Yeah, well, because of simultaneous possession, tie goes to the receiver.
Well, that's what they later determined.
That's the rule, Ted. But yeah, it's weird that they call that simultaneous possession when one man has it wrapped up on his chest and the other guy's kind of got his hands squishing it like it's a middle school boy, copping a field for the first time.
So one fake ref calls touchdown, one fake ref says no touchdown. It's like they're all confused. Everyone's looking around at each other, trying to figure out what's going on. And like you said, the official ruling comes down to, they both caught it. So ball goes to the receiver and touchdown. Yeah. And Packer fans are not happy. And the reason why is because they say that it shouldn't have even come down to that play because Golden Tate had actually pushed off before that. So it should have been waived. It should have been pass interference, game over, done.
Well, Josh, I'd like to think of this as two great makeup calls. A, the Testaverde getting in the end zone, bullshit.
Yep.
So there's our touch. And then two, the offensive pass interference in the end zone in the Super Bowl that we previously talked about, bullshit. So here's a nice makeup call for both of those, thanks to these fake officials. God bless them.
Absolutely 100%. You nailed it. I mean, I try to be objective about it. I'm like, he didn't catch that ball, or like, that's not a first down. Or, like people like our buddy Velasco. He's the opposite of that.
No, he's a zealot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was not one fraction of 1% unhappy about this call. I felt great. Everybody in the league was
empathy.
No, everybody in the league was like, that's it. We need our refs back. And I'm like, I like these refs. Can we keep these refs? Can we keep the fake refs? Because I'm loving this. Yeah. So we're finally getting our retributions here. So
yeah, take that.
Yep. So the fake refs and the Fail Mary. Well, it's about time something went our way. There you go.
Seahawks win in the most bizarre finish you'll ever see.
Number 10. We're down to the top 10, buddy. Here it is. The Great Hype. This is a wild one for Seahawk fans because it's quite possibly the biggest personality the team has ever seen. Still to this day. Maybe Richard Sherman? Maybe?
Yeah, I'd say he's probably pretty close to that.
But this guy was pretty insane. He was coming out of the University of Oklahoma, and he was a two-time Butkus Award winner in 1985 and 1986. And he was a unanimous pick for the All-American team as a linebacker in both of those years, in 85 and 86, as well as being a finalist for the Heisman Trophy in 1986. So he was the real deal back in college. But I would say he was probably one of the greatest hype guys of all time.
Whoever his team was to figure out how to hype him and get his like image and his whole brand out there in the 80s too, when like he looked like a bad guy from an 80s action movie or something. Like it just the whole style, they had it down to that whole the Boz thing. You know, it was one of a kind, man. There's nothing else I'd ever seen like it before.
Yeah, he looked like a wrestler back in the day.
Yeah,
right.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, so I mean, just to put this in perspective, this guy is straight out of college, and he not only signs the biggest rookie contract in NFL history, but he also signs the biggest Seahawks contract in the history of the franchise. 10 years, $11 million, which sounds so tiny now, but back then it was huge, right?
Inflation.
So now Seattle at the time, we keep talking about this. It was a very different era. Like Seattle looked and felt so different than it is now. I mean, that town is drastically different than it was back in the 80s. And even the players. I mean, the players were a lot different too. I mean, before the Boz, it was Kurt Warner, Jim Zorn, Steve Largent.
They were all very quiet, humble, hardworking. I mean, they really fit that blue-collar mentality. It wasn't this look at me before I've done a thing, which I think is kind of what rubs some of the Seattle fan base a little bit. I think we're optimistic, but then when things didn't go like we hoped.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. So, I mean, when the Boz came to town, it's like a Hollywood actor coming into town. I mean, this guy stormed into town riding in helicopters. He had his blonde hair with his sides painted up. He wore those like blue sunglasses. What were those glasses? Those
oh Jesus, blades or something. I don't know what they're called. Oakley blades.
Yeah, it's amazing. And he had these like big muscles. He wore those like cutoff shirts. Like he really was like a WWF player or like a WWF wrestler.
Like a bad guy that from like a G.I. Joe cartoon or something. I mean, he had this thing down. It was crazy.
He had movie posters, books, T-shirts, and so on. I mean, like it was Brian Bosworth mania. The kids loved him. Like, I mean, I had friends who were like, I shook his hand, and he would like whenever we played football. I don't know if you remember Kenny Tozer. Kenny Tozer. We'd play ball, and Kenny Tozer would be like, he'd make a tackle, and he'd get up, and he'd hold up his hand. He'd goes, balls, because he shook his hand with that right hand. I was like, okay, man. Like, but so it was like that kind of thing, right? Like he's like a superhero, but the hype just became that. It became hype. He had
hard for any human being to live up to that, I'd imagine.
Yeah, he had all these nagging injuries from college. He had that shoulder injury, and
I'm sure there's a lot of cortisone shots and things that we know now are not really good. They just cover up things that I'm sure he's just used and abused his body.
Yeah, I think the team doctor said that Boz was a 25-year-old man with the shoulders of a 60-year-old. Oh yeah, Jesus.
Yeah, we got some bad mojo in the Northwest with number one draft picks and stuff. Like you look at the Portland Trailblazers and things that even Seattle we missed on guys. Like ugh.
Yeah, it's bad. So his career ended the following season in 1989, and he became, like you said, one of the biggest NFL draft busts of all time. But Ethan, what would you say Brian Bosworth is most famous for around the league and probably in Seattle as well?
Or getting his ass trucked by Bo Jackson on Monday Night Football.
And you and I were both at this game, which is amazing, which is astonishing.
It's amazing.
It's crazy. We were like kids. Like,
and remember that the Raiders were my second team too, which not many Seahawks fans can understand being a division rival, but my love of Howie Long, the silver and black. Obviously, after the early 80s, it's been nothing but pain, and I've kind of just renounced those fandoms just because it's just too hard. But yeah, this game was just incredible. Once again, one of the games where just the overall atmosphere was almost like riotous at the beginning of that game. I mean, it was just crazy.
It was nuts. I remember that game specifically, going to the bathrooms. They were a scary thing, man. Like they had those like long troughs.
Just a stale smell of
you'd walk in there,
beer, piss, and peanuts. It was just like,
If you didn't know, you'd walk in there like, which what's the sink and where am I supposed to pee and where am I supposed to?
I think I peed in the sink once and got yelled at. I kid you not, man.
It was weird, man. I wonder if there's video of that just to like show people how odd it was, but. Yeah, so
very efficient though, very efficient.
Yeah, right.
The guy next to you could be drunk going over. So what are you packing? It's like, Jesus, man, give me some space.
Yeah. So, and Boz, he could be ripped on for a lot, but What you can say about the Boz was that he was a master at promotions and marketing. He was like a boxing promoter who worked for himself. Like he once trash talked Denver Broncos quarterback John Elway before a game. And it's famous now, but before the game, he sold like 10,000 t-shirts to the Denver Bronco fans for like $15 a pop. And the t-shirts were pretty awesome because on the front said, "What's the Boz worth?" And it said, "Nothing." And on the back, it said, "Ban the Boz." So pretty creative, actually. Funny
Even
t-shirts.
Even comparing on himself but selling it to me. Yeah, that's brilliant, man.
It's amazing. What's a Boz worth? Nothing.
That's pretty good in those Dr. Pepper commercials. So clearly he's got some talent there acting otherwise.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that was the great hype of Brian Bosworth. And it started out all crazy and wild. And then, well.
And went out with a whimper.
Yeah.
He was one of the best football players I've ever seen in my life in college.
All right, number 9, the old foot in the mouth. Ethan, this one's a big one, man. The old foot in the mouth. Yeah. So, in the history of sports, there are a lot of famous calls over the years. Babe Ruth famously calling a shot before blasting it into the stands. Joe Namath guaranteeing a Jets victory over the heavily favored Colts in Super Bowl III. And Muhammad Ali proclaiming that he's not only the greatest, but he's the double greatest.
Impressive.
And then you have easily one of the most famous lines in Seattle history. And that would be Matt Hasselbeck. The old Matt Hasselbeck quote.
Yeah.
And Matt Hasselbeck, I actually liked Matt Hasselbeck. He was super talented. He was a solid quarterback.
Even though he looked like Kent Austin, which was really weird.
Holy moly, you're right.
So much so. It's crazy. He got mistaken all the time around town in Seattle. People go and ask him if he was Matt Hasselbeck. I kid you not.
That's great.
Happened once when I was eating with him at an Ivar's fish house on the pier.
Funny. That is funny. But this call, oh man, this call.
Yeah.
When you call something like this on mic, heading into overtime in the playoffs at Lambeau Field, you better damn well come through.
That's right. Like you said, you got to love the moxie, right? Like the moxie he had was impressive.
Yes. I mean, for years after this, even to this day, I still like it. I like it. I like when my players are confident like this.
Yeah.
You especially want your quarterback to be confident. Like,
give me that swagger.
Russell Wilson, he never really buckles under pressure. It's almost like he encourages moments like this. But the difference is...
he backs it up.
But Russell Wilson doesn't say shit like this.
No, he doesn't either. He would never. That's not his style.
No.
He's more like you're like Leonidas, like this great leader who just sits there and is calm and steady through all of it. Like no highs, no lows. He's just going to be who he is, and he's going to kick some ass and take some names.
Right. So here we go. We're heading into overtime. The captains move to the center of the field. The flip is in the air. It's the Seahawks call to make. And I'll just let the audio speak for itself.
Seattle has won the toss. We won the ball. We're going to score.
Oh, boy. That was over the PA system here at Lambeau Field saying we want the ball and we're going to score.
So, yeah, that was a pretty bold statement. But Packers DB Al Harris, well, he had other plans in mind.
Yeah, he did.
Because on the 6th play of the Hawks' second possession of overtime...
Which is amazing, we got a second possession in overtime.
Yeah. Hasselbeck drops back, throws the ball to his left, and, well, game over. Al Harris picks the ball off, and he's gone. 52 yards for the walk-off victory. The Packers win in overtime. Ugh. And, Ethan, what is the old saying? If you talk the talk, you better walk the walk, because that's unacceptable.
How about shut your mouth and win the game, jackass? How about that?
Yeah. Just play. If you're gonna make calls like that, well, first off, win.
Yeah. Like I said, I like the moxie. Like I didn't hold it against him.
Nope. I remember people were just like, "Oh my God," when he made that call, and I was like, "Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, I didn't love the end. I didn't love the result, but I love the confidence. So, yep. The old foot in the mouth. Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Matthew.
Confidence is very sexy, don't you think?
All right, moving on. Number 8. Number 8, Ethan. The Revolting Blob. The Revolting Blob.
We're not talking about the Billy Madison movie, like Adam Sandler's famous film, right? Because I remember that one.
Yep. No, we're talking about the first Revolting Blob before Billy Madison. And
How could we forget?
Yeah, this one came out in the late 80s. So, California business mogul Ken Behring. This man ends up purchasing the Seahawks from the Nordstrom family in 1988. And this is the exact moment that actually kicks off the terrible, awful, disastrous decade known as the 1990s for Seahawks football. And it really goes to show you how much having a good owner can mean to a professional sports team. I mean, you want to talk about some dark days in Seattle.
Oh, I can remember every day just worrying about if we were going to lose a team, if it was going to move to LA, some of the stupid players opening their mouth and saying that. It was just like, it was a dark moment.
And it's really just like they say, it really does start from the top.
Yeah.
Because it trickles down. If you first don't have an owner who gives a crap, then he's going to hire people that don't give a crap. And the players aren't going to give a crap. Everyone's just going to be showing up for a paycheck. Nobody cares, right? The fans aren't going to show up. The games are going to be blacked out. This is what happens. And this is what happened with this guy. This is what happened. So after the 1995 season, owner Ken Behring officially transfers the team operations to Anaheim, California. And then he orders the team to hold their workouts to be held in California. So I remember, it was a Cortez Kennedy. He was like talking at the time. He's like, I was hired on to practice in Seattle. That's where I'm going to practice. So yeah, I don't think that went over too well with Ken Behring and the rest of the Behring family there.
So it was just so nice to see Tez stand up though and protect the interest of the Seattle fan base, man. That was like one of the reasons why he's endeared and loved.
Exactly. On February 2nd, 1996, Behring announces his plan to relocate the Seahawks to California, which is completely unheard of. I'm thinking about this these days. He orders the closure of the team's facility in Kirkland and hires moving vans to start hauling equipment out of headquarters.
It's almost like the Colts trying to sneak off in the middle of the night and move to Indianapolis.
Exactly.
And remember, this is right around the same year that or maybe a year after the Raiders moved back to Oakland. So this was very real. Like this is very,
Yep.
I mean, and I think most people celebrated the Raiders going back to Oakland just because that's where they originated from. But like this one was just so scary because once again, with LA losing teams, it just seemed like the perfect sense. Like the NFL might force this through just to have this big market covered with another football team.
Absolutely.
Lost the Raiders. It was so terrifying.
Agreed, man. And I remember this era too, because this is when Mike Zahn and we actually took a bus downtown to attend one of those Save Our Seahawks rallies.
God bless you too.
Yeah.
That sounds perfect.
Right? And we got down there and it was like almost over and we were like, oh man. And I just remember looking over at Mike going, dude, where is everybody? I thought this place would be like huge. I thought this would be like a massive rally, but it wasn't. And again, we got down there a little bit late, but I thought the rally would be going on for many, many hours, and it was not very long. So, but anyway, Ken Behring, his shady antics finally came to a halt when the NFL threatened to fine him $500,000 a day until he returned the Seahawks to Seattle. And
NFL did the right thing, which you were wondering they wouldn't simply because of markets and all that kind of crap.
Oh, totally. And King County, they even filed lawsuits against him. The people, we were all fed up. Remember Almost Live? Just every week.
One of the greatest television shows ever. Any Seattle native will know exactly what we're talking about.
They were just nonstop beating on this guy. Like, it was great.
Deservingly so.
And it was a crazy time for Seattle fans at the time. But, looking back, it became one of those, a blessing in disguise. Because what happened after that?
The greatest, other than, Mama Blue, maybe arguably the greatest Seahawks fan ever, because a guy that's a Northwest native, right, and wanted to make sure the Hawks stayed, decides it's time to pony up and get his business interests and some other buddies in. If I'm not mistaken, too, they're like absolutely responsible for the building of Seahawks Stadium and everything else as well, too, which I know that was controversial with the whole kingdom. But yeah, he buys the Seahawks and saves our team, and obviously puts us in a completely different trajectory than the one we were on under the leadership of Kim Behring. Because like you said, Josh, what a difference it makes when you have one that cares about the team, cares about the players, but more importantly, cares about the city and its fans. And that's Paul Allen in a nutshell. Like, you heard very little about Paul Allen other than the amazing things he was doing. In the early days, maybe some of the political shakeup because of the stadium, but like, he really took a back seat and let his general managers, his coaches, let them do their work and get out of the way. And man, he just, it took the team into
Love Paul Allen.
We're at today.
He's just hands down, flat out, one of the greatest, most important figures in all of Seattle sports history for the city.
It's heartbreaking too that he, I wish he would have been alive when they put him in the Ring of Honor, because he deserved that, to see all those fans and just the adulation and just how much we appreciate it. And it's a shame that his life was cut short and that was done. I'm pretty sure it was done after he passed, but because once again, a guy that deserved that gratitude, and maybe you just took it for granted after everything was finally done, because we'd had so many years of success to kind of moving in the opposite direction that I just wish maybe he got a chance to see.
Yeah, man. I'm just
happy
I got to see him. Do you remember they had a big rally before the 2015, the Super Bowl down in Phoenix? And I got to go to that rally, and I was like front row, just sitting there like cheering on all those old players.
Oh, awesome, Josh.
Paul Allen coming out and talking to everybody, and everyone loved it. It was like, oh man, this is the guy, man. This is the guy.
That's awesome.
He brought everything together, and he just changed everything, man. So
you're saying he probably did have a taste or a feel of just like the appreciation even years later, because that's considerable years later from the purchase of the team, and the fact that people are still saying that is just, that's awesome.
You could genuinely tell he was a fan and he cared about the team. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that he actually rented out that baseball field in Phoenix to have that rally for the Seahawk fans before the Super Bowl down here. Isn't that nuts?
That's awesome, but that doesn't surprise me.
This is amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. He's just, he's an amazing, amazing human being. So, Paul Allen, rest in peace. And I'm just glad that this one had a happy ending from where it started with the revolting blob to the prince in shining armor.
Sorry.
Okay, number 7, the play call.
Oh, God. My wife still has ulcers over this.
It had to be on this list. Most non-Seahawk fans would have it probably higher, but I am not putting it above number 7.
This is a list for Seahawk fans. So
as much as I wanted to leave it out, it could not be left off this list.
No, it's definitely one of the craziest moments in Seahawks history. It can't be left off.
And of course, we're talking about Super Bowl 49 on February 1st, 2015. It was the returning champs, the Seattle Seahawks, facing the New England Patriots in Glendale, Arizona. And many refer to this game as one of the greatest Super Bowls in NFL history. Unless you're a Seahawks
fan. Yeah.
Exactly. So this team
Still
again.
drinking this one off.
It was packed with superstars. You had the bad guy Tom Brady. No one likes Tom Brady. Yeah, the bad guy Tom Brady he wins like championship over championship.
You mad, bro?
Yeah. You had the good guy Russell Wilson. You had the rebel rouser with Richard Sherman. I mean, there's so many. You had Marshawn Lynch, who's popping Skittles. Yeah, just popping Skittles, and Pete Carroll. It was just amazing.
I'm all about that action, boss.
I was offered a ticket to this game, to attend this game. And they're like, I need to know within the next 30 minutes if you want this ticket.
What?
And I'm like, Ethan, you know how much that ticket was?
Oh, I can only imagine.
It was thousands of dollars.
Thousands
of dollars. I almost went to this game.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I didn't, because I wouldn't want to walk out of there like that. And then
thousands of dollars on the door.
And then B, I ended up using that money to buy my condo.
Well, there you go, man. Much better investment, sir.
Oh man, but this game was it's like a lot of Seahawks games, a complete nail biter.
Oh gosh.
Tied 14 at half. And the Seahawks come from behind, like they always do. And it's one for the ages. And, of course, it comes down to the fourth quarter. Seattle's down 28-24. With time running out for the Seahawks, Jermaine Kearse comes up with an insane catch with just over a minute remaining in the entire game.
Mr. Clutch.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is looking good. So, on 1st and goal, Marshawn Lynch runs the ball to the 1-yard line. So, here we are. Super Bowl 49. This is it. 29 seconds remain on the clock. Seattle has one timeout left.
Yeah,
we are 1 yard away from being back-to-back Super Bowl champs.
Jesus, Josh.
Let the dynasty begin. I mean, dude, I remember us. Lee flew down. He was down here for the game. We had a packed house full of people. I remember like it was yesterday. We all had our little packets of Skittles that we'd bought. We were all shaking it like, woo! We're literally celebrating. Because not only is Marshawn going to score, he's going to do one of those things where he just walks into the end zone.
Yeah.
It's going to be celebration.
Or maybe jump up and do his nut grab into the end zone, which is my favorite.
Yeah, you got to love that. But we're already celebrating. It's a done deal. And then... Russell Wilson takes the snap.
Malcolm Butler.
Steps back. Throws the ball. It's picked off. Intercepted on the goal line. Malcolm Butler. Game is over. Seahawks lose. And we're just kind of sitting there staring at the TV. Like, I don't know if you would do the same thing, but we're just kind of staring at it like, wait, that can't be like the end. Like, there has to be like a penalty or...
Well, so often in Seattle, something happened like that, and you felt like it's never over, you know, but in that one, it was sadly over.
Yeah. So...
Painful.
Run the ball. Run the goddamn ball. But
I'm looking at this SB Nation article right here that's talking about like how the Seahawks made the right call. They may not have executed it right because they're showing the actual photo where the Patriots have 10 in the box for our 7 or 8 blockers. Like that, there's no way. I mean, given with beast mode, you never know. That's what this guy's arguing. This writer on this particular article. It's Jeff Schwartz too. He's like an old U of O guy.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, look. I think later Pete Carroll said, you know, I think didn't he take like credit for? It was like Bill Bevel and
he took
Carroll,
the shot. Yeah.
And he's like, look, I still don't regret the call, but I hated the outcome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing I love about Pete Carroll is that too, just that he's a leader. He takes ownership, and you know, even though he's probably not the guy who said he's trusting his coordinator, and then he takes the blame. He'll take the fall because he's trying to protect his players, protect his.
Yeah, we need that Men in Black mind eraser thingy.
Can we just forget this happened? Can we please just move on to the next? All right, go ahead.
Okay. All right, that does it for the worst play call in Seattle Seahawks history.
I'm going to throw up. I think I'm going to throw up.
Don't throw up.
The nice dinner that I had. I'm going to throw it up.
All right, number 6, the Comeback Kids. All right, so this is probably the craziest game in Seahawks history right here. I was actually not at this game.
Which is shocking.
Right. You almost
were down in Arizona at this time,
But again, this is one of those games where they priced out like almost everybody I knew was not going to this game. You know, you had to have some big buco bucks at this time. We're returning Super Bowl champs. They had upped the tickets like $100 a piece, like above what they were. And it was the Packers, you know, one of our biggest rivals of this era. So
and a big money gainer anytime they come to town anyhow.
Yeah, you have the ultimate showdown. You have Aaron Rodgers versus current superstar Russell Wilson, and probably overall just the height of Seahawks mania in general. I mean, this game is just crazy. I mean, it starts out just perfect Seattle, dark, rainy skies. The weather is awful. The game personified what Pete Carroll was all about. He was a gambler, man. He was not like Mike Holmgren or Chuck Knox. Those guys played it safe. They played it very, very safe, and Pete Carroll did not.
Yeah.
Our old coaches, they'd be like, if we haven't made a first down by the third down, well, we're just going to punt it. Just going to punt the sucker away. And that is not the philosophy of Pete Carroll.
Right, like he'll look in his guys' eyes and see like they're excited and they want to go for it. He's like, hell yeah, let's do it. You know, just like he's a player's coach, man. He wants to make his guys like feel like, hey, I trust you and we'll go out there and compete. Let's do it.
Yeah, he believes in his players and he thinks like a player too. Right? So, like, he doesn't think of like a coach. He's like, you know, again, he's always hitting those guys. He's running down, like up and down the field and stuff. And he's like, geez, this guy's like,
I wish I had that energy and I'm not near his age.
Exactly.
It's me to shame.
Yeah, so this game is completely nuts, and we'll just go over it real quick here. So, basically, here we go. Seahawks are down 16 to nothing in the third quarter. So it's not exactly looking great for the Seahawks at this point in time. The Seahawks, they need a score. So on comes the kicking squad. Hauschka is set to kick. The ball is snapped, and it's a fake. Are you kidding me? It's a fake. John Ryan takes off with the ball. Is he gonna try to run for that? Is he gonna try to run for the first? Oh my God! John Ryan is throwing the football. And it's complete. He actually completes the ball. I can't believe what I'm watching here. So he throws a touchdown to offensive tackle Gary Gilliam. Wow. So we score a touchdown. The crowd is going nuts. And just like that, the Seahawks are back in the game. The score is now 16-7. But fast forward into the fourth quarter, and Russell Wilson throws a pick. So now it's back to not looking so good. But Seattle gets the ball back. Lynch has a huge run. And then Wilson scores a touchdown keeper with 2 minutes remaining in the game. And the score is now 19-14.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Yep, there is a chance. I mean, it's still kind of like...
going to be a stretch, right?
Yeah. So the Hawks are now down 5 points. And we're in desperate need of an onside kick.
Which usually never works.
No. Rarely ever works. Yeah, so really that's the only way we could really pull this off. So the ball is kicked, it bounces up in the air, and it goes right through the hands of Brandon Bostic. And it's recovered by Chris Matthews of the Seahawks. Are you kidding me? Is this real? Like, this is really happening. Like, how often does that happen? I mean, it's got to be, 15% of the time that you actually recover one of these kicks?
It might be even lower than that.
It's low. And so...
not very successful play ever.
So Marshawn Lynch actually scores another amazing touchdown. Russ throws a crazy 2-point conversion, and it puts the Hawks up 22-19. So now, there's just 1 minute and 22 seconds remaining. Aaron Rodgers takes them downfield, and they punch in a field goal to send the game into overtime.
We've been in overtime against the Packers before, Josh.
That's true.
And playoffs. This is so scary. I was just waiting for Wilson to say something like, we're going to take the ball and score.
Oh, God.
Thank God he didn't.
So here we go. It's overtime. 3rd down and 6. The Hawks are on the 30-yard line. Wilson drops back. He throws a huge play to Baldwin for 35 yards. Huge play. But not as big as this next one. The very next play. 1st and 10. 1st and 10.
Time to gamble.
Wilson throws a bomb to Jermaine Kearse for the walk-off win and a trip to Super Bowl 49, which we don't want to talk about, but a trip to Super Bowl 49.
Mr. Clutch coming through again, man. I'm telling you, Jermaine Kearse might be one of the most underrated Seahawk receivers in history. I mean, that guy just came up with big play after big play and game after game.
Completely agree. And what a game that was. One of the craziest games in Seahawks history. Might be the craziest game in Seahawks history. And one that we'll never forget.
Wilson toward the end zone. It is caught! Seattle's going to the Super Bowl. Jermaine Kearse.
This next one is hilarious.
Yeah.
Number 5, Butterfingers. The famous Tony Romo botched snap.
Oops, I Romo'd again. No, I mean, this is so sad, too, because this is where kind of the whole beginning of that poor, because I'll be honest, as far as Dallas Cowboy quarterbacks go, I kind of like Tony Romo. Like, he was hard not to like.
Oh, I totally agree. The night before that game, there was a piece done on Tony Romo, and they were asking him if he'd ever been in a big game situation similar to this. And he responds, yeah, I had a game very similar to this back in, I can't remember if he said college or high school. But the reporter goes, "Oh, wow, that's awesome. So how did that go?" And he responds, "Not well." He's like, and he gave his his old smirk that he goes, and I was like, "This guy's hilarious." Like because I guess he lost the game for him, so he ripped on himself, and I was like, "This is great."
Little did he know he'd have a chance to repeat that.
Oh my God! Yeah. So
against the Seahawks in the playoffs.
Yes. So I was also at this game, and I was in the Hawks Nest, which at the time was the rowdiest section in the entire stadium. I remember people that actually wanted to avoid that part of the stadium just because it had that reputation. But not us. Our crew, we loved being in that section because we were all about it. And the craziest stuff always seemed to happen on that side of the field. But I'm beginning to think that that's not really a coincidence. So here we go. The date was January 6th, 2007 at CenturyLink Field in Seattle, Washington. And this was the NFC Wild Card Playoffs. So fast forwarding to the fourth quarter, the Cowboys are trailing 21-20, but it's essentially over because they're on the 19-yard line. It's the fourth quarter. They have a 19-yard field goal that they just need to boot through the uprights, and it's essentially over. So it's 4th and 1 with 1 minute and 19 seconds left to go in the game. All they have to do is just punch in that field goal, and they advance on to the playoffs.
That's like almost an extra point in distance, if I remember right.
Oh yeah. We're so basically, as a fan, the only thing we have at this point is to wave our hands and yell as loud as we possibly can. And that's what we did. And this was amazing. And like you said, it's right around that same time that everyone started hating Tony Romo. And this certainly did not help things for Mr. Romo. So the ball is snapped. Romo is actually the holder because a lot of the times they have the quarterbacks who hold the ball because, well, they're used to calling the plays and they're usually good with their hands. And
one of the backups, you too. And remember, he started that season as the backup quarterback.
Yes, you are 100% correct. I totally forgot about that. So the ball is snapped and Romo goes to place the ball down and it slips out of his hands. And I remember this being a big deal because remember, wasn't he talking about how the ball was slippery?
Yeah.
Because they, grease up the balls and stuff like that. So the ball slips out of his hands. And, with kicking, it's all about timing. So, of course, the play's done. It's shot. So Romo, what does he do? He just picks it up and he just starts running. It's the only thing he can do at this point. He's running.
It looks like he might punch it in, too. I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah, we're like, oh, my God, what happened? Because, in the stands, I don't have the view of, everybody else on
Sure.
TV. So from the stands, we're just watching. We're like, wait a minute, where's the kick? And then you see Romo running to the right. On our side, it was the right. So he's running. And Ethan, what happens next?
Jordan Babineau comes screaming from the other side like he's going to block it. And then continues to hustle because he's coming from the opposite side and chases him down from behind and just does a beautiful textbook drive down and wrap and squeeze any foot or leg you get and just takes Romo down, man. Romo hits the ground, the ball pops out. I mean, it was an ugly fall.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, we were partying like crazy after that. And we're looking down at Romo and he's just sitting there with his hands over his face. Oh, it was glorious. And man, I'm telling you, for years and years and years, we talked about that play and how awesome that was. Thank you, Tony.
Classic moment, Tony.
Butterfingers.
Romo holds. 19-yard field goal attempt. Oh, it is fumbled by Romo, and then Romo's going to run to the end zone, and he's going to get tackled by Jordan Babineau. Amazing.
Number 4, the tip. The famous tip. Easily one of the most legendary moments in Seattle history, without a doubt. This one took place on January 19th, 2014, CenturyLink Field in Seattle. It was the NFC Championship game versus the San Francisco 49ers. And
I hate the 49ers, sorry.
Yeah, there was so much hate between. Remember the hate between these two teams?
There's so much.
Oh, it was. This quickly became probably the biggest rivalry in the entire NFL at this point in time. I mean, you had
only maybe Seattle and Green Bay, but that's kind of before that even. Right around that time.
Yep. So you had the two khaki-wearing coaches in Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll, and you had the crazy fans of Seattle, the 12s going nuts. I was also at this game, by the way. Thank you very much. And that place was rocking. It was loud. I wouldn't say it was as loud as the first NFC Championship game.
Yeah, I'm sure it was up there though. One of the top 5.
It was definitely top 5. Yeah. But you also had the two young up-and-coming quarterbacks in Russell Wilson and Colin Kaepernick. You had the LOB. They were just nuts. You had Thomas, Chancellor, and of course, Richard Sherman.
Yeah.
Who'd been talking trash to Michael Crabtree for weeks.
Yes.
So you had that dynamic, and I think Richard Sherman was actually talking trash to the coach, too.
Harbaugh.
Yeah, so...
We're back to the Stanford days.
Yep. Pretty much anybody who was, ever in his way at that period of time was getting trash talked. But it came down to that final last play by the 49ers, which would go on to be a very popular poster across the state of Washington. I think Lee actually mentioned this one time that it's so iconic that it should almost have its own statue outside the stadium with this picture. But but San Francisco needed 6 points to tie and 7 to win. So Colin Kaepernick drops back with 30 seconds remaining on the clock. I remember holding my breath on this one. I was literally holding my breath. But Kaepernick drops back. He sees that Crabtree is actually open, and he throws a beautiful ball right into the end zone. And I'm telling you, most people would not have been able to get to this ball, but most people are not Richard Sherman. So the ball is in the air, and Richard Sherman makes one of the greatest plays in Seahawks history. He tips the ball, preventing a touchdown, and it's intercepted by Malcolm Smith. Game over. The Seahawks are heading to the Super Bowl for the second time. How great was that snapshot moment in time? It's so great. So yeah, that was the end of the play, but that wasn't the end of the story. Ethan, what happened after that?
You got Sherman then runs over to Crabtree, reaches out his hand, says good game, and offers to shake his hand, and Crabtree swats his hand away and pushes him. I mean, you get this whole, once again, Richard Sherman's clearly doing to show him up, because, I mean, once you've talked that much trash for weeks in advance, because we played them twice, obviously, in the regular season as a division opponent, and this only roused up Sherman even more. So it only added to some of the great kind of Shakespearean, verbal combat that we were seeing between Richard Sherman, like you said, the world. Which was always so fun as a fan. It's he's one of those guys, I'm sure every other team hated him. Yeah. And you probably would if he was on a team you didn't like, but man, you love it when that guy's on your team.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then he heads over to, poor little Aaron Andrews for the post-game interview. And he's just still fired up. You can tell, he's amped up, kind of like Owen Schmidt, wants to bang his head against his helmet or something. It's he's so amped up. So then she's like,
He said bang to helmet. I think I'm talking about banging around. We're getting a little crazy out there. All right.
Oh, and then his famous interview, man. He's all, I'm the best player in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're going to get. Don't you ever talk about me. And then Andrews is like, who?
Yeah, she looked terrified.
Yeah, she's like, she didn't even know what's going on. She's like, who said something bad about you?
It's like, Aaron, pay attention. Do your homework.
So great. Yeah. So that almost got more press than the actual game, other than, in Seattle, of course. But possibly the most legendary game in Seahawks history, certainly that took place in Seattle. Yeah. All right. So that concludes the tip, and we'll all be looking forward to that statue outside of the Seahawks stadium once Sherman retires.
Shotgun for Kaepernick, takes the snap, looks, fires near side, going for the end zone, goes, it's coming after it. Is it picked up? Is it picked up? It is! It's picked up in the end zone! The Seahawks intercept in the end zone! Richard Sherman tipped it!
All right, moving on. The last laugh. This one,
oh my.
This one is epic.
This is epic. This is one that I can remember So like just my dad and I, this is the one thing that we could kind of get along. Like I said, the season tickets I had since the 80s when I go to games with my dad. And I remember watching this one at home because obviously they're at Kansas City, and it just,
it's so
without
good.
giving away too much, this was just like, I've never seen my dad more exuberant with joy than this moment.
Same thing with my mom, man. Same thing exactly with my mom. She probably scared the poor animals that were running. But just like we were talking before about not giving up, and in sports, don't ever give up. And it couldn't have been displayed any better than within this game. The date was November 11th, 1990. It was week 10 versus the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. The sun was shining. It was clear, 63-degree day. The stands were packed. You could just see that red sea of fans, 71,000 fans in attendance. And our quarterback for this game was the one and only Dave Krieg. And this game is definitely legendary, but it's not legendary for what the Seahawks did, which it should be, but it's not. It's actually known for what one man did on the field, which is, to this day, pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah. The one-man wrecking crew that was Derek Thomas sacking Dave Krieg 7 times.
7
which was a new NFL
times.
record for most sacks in a single contest.
It was insane. I mean, just watching the highlights of this, you're just watching it going, oh my God, he looks like, remember we used to play Tecmo Bowl? And you could run around the guys, and it looks like that fast, like how fast he was during that.
It looked like Tecmo Bowl.
It was crazy. You're like, and it just he couldn't be stopped. He could not be stopped.
To be honest, even before the play we're obviously alluding to, Dave Krieg probably could have easily been sacked like 4 or 5 more times that game by him. Like there was so many times where like I'm wondering like, is anyone on earth blocking? And why are we sending anybody out a route at this point? Like what are we doing? Like,
it's insane.
So frustrating at home to watch. Like we were just getting destroyed.
It's completely insane. And again, like these damn Seahawks games, it comes down to the very end. It's the fourth quarter and the Seahawks are down with 4 seconds remaining. The Hawks need just a touchdown to win this game. The ball is snapped, and Dave Krieg,
damn near gets killed again.
He looks like he's about to get sacked again by Derek Thomas.
He like literally sneaks right out of his arms, I believe.
It's crazy. He somehow manages to avoid Thomas and getting sacked for the 8th time, and he throws this bullet strike right into the end zone to Paul Scansey for the tie. Are you kidding me? First off, how did he escape that? Secondly, what a throw!
Well, it's crazy too if you watch it. Scansey is like open, or like I'm like throw the ball. Like he's so open down the side, which
he's
is
wide
incredible,
open, right in the middle.
And then it's like, but Krieg doesn't see it, and so he waits until he's actually ran back into some sort of coverage. So by the time the ball's released, you're like, oh, this isn't going to be good.
But
damn it, we missed our window of opportunity.
Well, Ethan, he has other things on his mind, like running for his life.
Yeah. Well, no question. And to be all fair, he's been doing it all day long too.
He's probably exhausted.
His, like life.
He's exhausted. Yeah,
well,
so
Scansey, who was like the working class here. I mean, just another one of those receivers you had to love. He was like the poor man's Largent.
Right,
He
like
caught things.
Total workhorse. Yeah, totally.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and just like you were watching with your dad, I was watching with my mom, and we were in the living room, and she screamed so loud that our next door neighbors, they probably thought there was a murder going on or something. I mean, like I remember jumping up so high in the air that my knuckles, like the old popcorn.
Yeah.
I had blood coming down my hands, and I was like, didn't care. This is amazing. And we ended up winning that game, by the way.
Yeah, well, Norm Johnson, your favorite, comes out and kicks the game-winning extra point. That was a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, Norm for the win. Yes. So yeah, when I finally had the chance to meet up with Dave Krieg, I made sure to personally thank him for that game specifically, because it was one of the greatest games that I've ever seen as a Seahawks fan. And talking about not giving up, man, that is a perfect example of never giving up. Because, dude, at that point in time, it's easy to give up. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, he was being abused in that game.
Yeah.
Abused. So, the fact that he was able to come back and throw essentially the winning touchdown in that game is nuts. Completely insane. So, Dave Krieg, you may have been sacked 7 times in that game for an NFL record, but you, my friend, you had the last laugh. All right, number 2, the Beast.
Yes.
Oh man, what can you say about this next one? This man's character alone is legendary. But then you add in his mad skills on the field, and it's just one of those things that really only comes once in a lifetime. And of course, we are talking about the one and only Marshawn Lynch.
Beast mode.
He hails from Oakland, California, and attended the University of Cal, and was drafted by the Bills as their 12th overall pick in 2007. And he played there until he was traded to the Seahawks in 2010. And I think it was a good move for everybody because in Buffalo, he had some issues off the field. And Pete Carroll's known for being able to work with players that had like a troubled past.
Yeah, I think you also saw him in college when he was at USC and just said, I've seen few talents like him, right? Like just...
Yep. And I heard him say, like in an interview one time, that he liked his style because he ran angry. I love that.
Yeah, he does.
Always love that. But Marshawn Lynch's career in Seattle almost looks like a human highlight reel with how many great runs he's had over the years. It's pretty insane. But the one play that he will always be remembered for in history came on January 8th, 2011. It was the NFC wildcard playoffs versus the New Orleans Saints in Seattle, Washington at Quest Field. And Ethan, if you remember this, we really had no right being in this game.
No, 7-9 record. We were kind of just the beginning of the Pete Carroll era, just trying to kind of find our identity, and
yeah,
it was a beginning phase.
And here we are, we're hosting an 11-5 team, and we're 7-9 because we won the division.
Just ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous. So this game was pretty wild. It was back and forth scoring between the two teams. Drew Brees had like 400 yards passing with 2 touchdowns, and Matt Hasselbeck, he threw for like 272 yards with 4 touchdowns. So this game was pretty wild.
Yeah.
But with 3 minutes and 38 seconds left in the fourth quarter, the Seahawks are leading 34-30. And this is when it all happened. Marshawn Lynch goes beast mode.
Goes in motion right to left. Turn and handle Lynch left side. Finds a little bit of a hole. Keeps his legs moving. He's across the 40. Midfield. 45. He's on the run. Lynch. 40. Pushes him at 35. Look at him go. He's down to 20. 15. He could go. He is going to go. Touchdown Seahawks. Oh my word. A 67-yard run. Marshawn Lynch. Unbelievable. Must have knocked 5 guys down on the way to the end zone. The beast is alive and well.
Craziest 76-yard run you will ever witness. Can't disagree with that. My thoughts on this one are just like, I mean, once again, I've never seen somebody look to not only run people over, but then maneuver. I think he broke certain guys' tackles more than once. Like, it was just incredible. Because let's be honest, like Marshawn Lynch isn't going to, beat too many people in a foot race, straight line, but his elusiveness, his physicality, the fact that he's like a bowling ball. Like, I swear his ass and hips are like sometimes no more than like 12 to 24 inches off the ground. He runs at such a low center of gravity with those just
big
absolute
legs.
tree trunk legs, man.
Yep.
It was just like a few things. And then you got to love when he gets near the end zone and he jumps up and grabs the ball sack and throws the ball up and just dives in back. I mean, it's just like everything about just the style, the swagger, the attitude. I mean, it was the beginning of, I think, just a legendary love affair between the 12s and Mr. Marshawn Lynch.
I was also at this game. I was jumping up and down like a madman. And that's another legendary piece of the story is Beastquake. So it was later determined that the crowd activity and noise was so intense that the local seismic station actually registered a tremor, like during the exact moment of the run at Quest Field. So that's why this moment is actually known as Beastquake, because it literally caused an earthquake. So amazing. I love it. I love it. So Marshawn Lynch actually had a famous sequel to this The next time it happened was a few years later in Arizona, which I was also in attendance for. Similar to the last run, he busts loose, shoving guys out of the way, and scores a career-long 79-yard touchdown run.
Yeah, Beast Mode 2.0.
Beast Mode 2.0.
15 now at the 21. Turn and hand to Lynch. He stutter steps. Breaks through the line, makes a man miss. Cuts back outside right 30, 35, 40. Down the far sidelines. Pushes a defender. Keeps fighting. He's still moving. He's going to go. Down to the 20, the 15. They're chasing him 10. He dives in. Are you kidding me?
What
Touchdown,
a run. Oh,
Seahawks. Holy catfish. 79 yards, and that made Beastquake look like a walk in the park. Marshawn Lynch, sick, a bad back, says, get out of my way. Holy smoke.
So yeah, I mean, he's amazing. I mean,
he is.
Wouldn't you actually compare him to some of those older style bruiser backs who would literally seek out guys to destroy on the field?
Yeah. You're saying the Zonkas, the Earl Campbells, the Jim Browns, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Like an old, you remember the guy who used to play for the Buccaneers out of Purdue, Mike Allstott?
Oh, yes.
He was a little more than that modern, but kind of cut from that same cloth of we're going to punish you if you're going to tackle us.
Exactly. So that's, yeah.
But once again, just showing everything that Paul Allen and Pete Carroll and John Schneider brought in. You had guys that were just all-out competitors, all-out effort, and Beast Mode just absolutely encapsulated all of that. I mean, I really feel like he set the tone. It sounds like he was the peacemaker in the locker room, too, between the whole brawl between Tate and Percy Harvin. I mean, this guy was just so, absolutely beyond valuable for our team in ways that, most people will never know, except those that are, behind the scenes.
Just feed him some Skittles, man, and he's going to be all cool, man. Yeah. Just feed him some Skittles.
Exactly.
I just got you the ball. That's the end zone right there. The game's on the line.
I'm just about that action, boss.
All right, here we go. The number one craziest moment in Seahawks history. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. The payback.
The most epic moment in Seahawks history, baby.
Yes, sir. So a lot of the events and plays that we've spoken about can be argued for where they should have been placed within this list. But I think that no one can argue this next one.
Yeah.
It's really what Hollywood movies are made of. I think I mentioned that to you before we were doing this. I mean, Steve Largent, his entire career is like a storybook in itself. The guy looked like an actor. He looked like William Catt from The Greatest American Hero, or that or that Christopher Atkins guy from The Blue Lagoon. You remember those guys?
I just remember they're blonde and the locks and definitely
the curly hair.
Steve Largent had it, man. He was just a cute little sunshine.
Everybody's mom loved him.
Yeah, good looking guy, great smile.
Yep, Mr. Hollywood, baby. And
super nice, strong, man of faith, and
exactly. So I mean, he's one of those guys that's just you can't hate Steve Largent. Everyone loves Steve Largent. And he ran some of the greatest routes in history. You talk to some of those old guys back in the day, and they're like, dude, he was legit. That guy, he might not have been the fastest guy in the world.
Gifted athlete by any means.
But the way he ran his routes so perfectly, and he never dropped the ball that was thrown in his direction.
He got so wide open. It was just shocking. They knew that's the only thing we had sometimes.
Yep.
And he would still get wide open.
Yeah.
It was just so impressive.
Absolutely. So, and we keep going back to this, but I really think that he's lost in the conversation of all-time greats. And I think there's a number of different factors when it comes to that.
I think media idiots lose him, but I think when you talk to Jerry Rice, you talk to if you listen to some of the actual talented receivers that knew who was doing what in the game, most of them give him his due.
I think part of that because he was at the very end of when the league started kind of changing.
Yeah, that's true.
It was not a passing league.
High backs, cloud of dust.
Yeah, exactly. And we're so far up in the Northwest that we might as well be in Alaska to the rest of the country.
A different planet to the rest of the country, yeah.
So, him being the most recognizable player on our team, which he was, still really didn't mean much, as far as respectability anyway. But, just to put this in perspective.
Yeah, this is incredible.
When Steve Largent retired in 1989, he held 6 NFL records, including most yards, most receptions, the most touchdowns,
receiving touchdowns. Yeah, that's crazy.
most consecutive games with a reception, most seasons with 50 or more catches, and the most 1,000-yard seasons. And he's also the first player in NFL history to catch 100 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And I actually still have that newspaper clipping of his 100th touchdown catch. And it's pretty awesome, actually. Even that looks like it's straight out of a fictional sports movie or something. But part of the reason Largent was also so loved is because he really gave it his all. I mean, if a ball was a little bit overthrown, he would literally lay out and dive for the ball. I mean, that is like old school. I mean, you don't see that type of effort these days. I mean, sometimes you will, but not like for regular passes. I mean, he would go like completely horizontal laying out for a ball.
Yeah.
Like,
well, part of the reason he took some of the shots he took too, because he just with reckless abandon, no concern for his own well-being, he would lay out to try to get every ball.
Right. Yeah. If you're throwing in his direction, he's like, I'm coming down with this ball. Like,
yeah.
And it is a different sport. There's a lot more money on the line these days, so I get it. But, watching these guys back in the day, you really felt that they really loved playing football. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course, they made a lot of money, but by today's standards, they made nothing. I mean, really. I mean, you have those old school guys back in the day, like Pete Rose, like diving headfirst into like home plate and stuff. And you're like, good Lord. And it wasn't just football. You'd have like in basketball, you have like these guys like Larry Bird diving into the stands just to save a basketball. You're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, wow.
It's a different level of competitor there.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll would have loved him.
Exactly. So with all this being said, is probably how the next event was even able to happen in the first place. And just from describing what type of guy he was, how horrified people were about what happened. So here we are, fast forward to the 1988 home opener versus the Denver Broncos at Mile High Stadium. And Dave Krieg drops back. He throws the ball downfield to Steve Largent, and Broncos safety Mike Harden, who's apparently out for blood that day, annihilates Largent and throws in a total cheap shot in the process. He used his forearm?
His elbow, yeah, right into
right into his face.
Jaw.
Dude, it crushed him in the face. Yeah. Largent is dead. Seeing him fall down, he's completely out. He falls down. He's out cold.
Teeth are broken off.
Yeah.
Yeah, eyes just out. Yeah, down for the count like a boxer landing a knockout punch.
Yeah, it's kind of actually disturbing to watch still to this day. It's
the way his body just crumples.
Yeah, it's bad. So as a result, Harden is fined by the NFL $5,000 for that cheap shot hit. And then we fast forward 14 weeks later. The Broncos and Seahawks meet again. But this time, it's at the Kingdom in Seattle.
A game I was in attendance for.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep. This was amazing.
Of course, you have to get me back for all the games I went to, right?
Well, I've only got a handful on you. That's it. So most of those ones you were at with me too. So
Largent and Harden, they are back on the field to face each other again. And just like a script out of a perfectly written novel. I mean, Ethan, how do you even begin to describe just how perfect this is?
I don't know. I mean, it's so iconic, but at the same time, it's not in any way, shape, or form would you ever have imagined what ends up transpiring there.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's really something that just doesn't seem like it really happened. But here we go. So Dave Krieg, he drops back. He throws the ball up into the end zone. It's not a great ball.
No, it was badly underthrown.
Yeah, it gets picked off. But thank goodness it does. Because, Ethan, who's the guy that just happens to come down with the ball?
Oh, it's Mike Harden, and he takes off. He's got a pretty good return going on this thing.
Absolutely.
You're like, oh, no.
Mike Harden is like, dude, he takes it out of the end zone. He's like, I can take this back. So he's running back. He's getting some yards. And out of nowhere, he is annihilated. absolutely destroyed. And it was like one of the best hits that I've ever seen on anybody. And who was the man that actually laid down that hit?
Steve Largent.
Our boy Steve Largent was the man responsible for that sick explosion of a hit.
It's an unreal hit, man. We're talking ankles over asshole. Like, he got upended. He's going to do like a headfirst pile driver into the Kingdome turf, which I can imagine was like being dropped onto like a concrete floor. I mean,
he absolutely
demolishes. Ball pops out.
He destroys Mike Harden. And on top of that, he causes him to fumble.
Hey, Josh, who recovered that fumble as well?
Steve Largent. Are you kidding me? I mean, Steve Largent to this day calls it his favorite play of all time.
That's saying something with all the amazing accolades and records and things. And I mean, that just shows you once again just like how iconic this is.
Steve Largent, his favorite play is a defensive play.
Yep. I mean, it is. It's amazing.
It really does. It gives you goosebumps still to this day just to watch that play. And it's the single greatest moment in Seahawks history. I mean, there's not too many moments that you could think of that play out just like a Hollywood movie. And that's what this one did. I mean, think about it. It has the perfect ending. It's kind of like watching the movie The Natural at the very end when he cracks that home run and
or
all
like
it's amazing.
Some 80s movie where he beats up the bully at the end or something like that, some 80s teen movie. Like, he just got violent, you got paybacks on the bully, knocked his ass out.
Exactly. Stuff that never happens in real life that actually, because it only happens in a movie. This happened in real life.
Like 80s cheese at its finest.
Yes, that is perfect. Yes, I love it. And it really couldn't have happened to a better guy. I mean, he was the ultimate Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah, the face of the Seahawks, man, for so many years. You're absolutely correct.
Absolutely. So there you go. That does it. That concludes our list of the 40 craziest moments in Seahawks history.
Oh, and Largent unloaded and got the ball. Holy cow, what a shot.